Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy podcast. I'm Mark Bridge, and I'm here with Zach Worsner.
That's me.
And today we're going to talk about Avengers Endgame, the movie we've been waiting for what seems like a decade, and we finally get it. Now, there's so much to talk about that I had to break it down. Usually, I just like wing my thoughts and sort of play off each other with the conversation and what we can remember. But this movie is 3 hours long, packed to the brim with so much awesomeness that we have to be able to touch upon at least 90% of it. So I had to break it down. So we're gonna follow along the outline here, and hopefully we get to everything we wanted to talk about with this movie. So you ready, Zach?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. So we're gonna start with the box office. Holy shit! Right? Where the previous record holder for opening weekend was Infinity War. $257 million opening weekend and 640 worldwide. Now a lot of people said this couldn't this would beat it, but not by much. Only because there were two things working against it. It's runtime, which would mean that it's not enough it can't run enough had enough
Fewer,
showing. Yeah,
fewer screenings per day.
Fewer screenings per day. And then the second would be that it's along with fewer screenings per day, there's not enough theaters in the world that could make 300 million or whatever, but it might get close to that. What they didn't anticipate is the theater chains going, oh wait, there's only one person coming to see us? Cancel that. Let's put more, because it's digital now. It's not back in the days when everything was, film run on project. You had the projectionists have to they only get like what enough for certain screens. They would have to order more reels, so to speak. It's digital now, so all you got to do is just load the film on hard drives. So pretty much theaters, number one, were open 72 hours straight. They were
Ooh.
they were putting it on more screens where other movies would have been playing. They canceled those movies. It's supply and demand. Like if they see a screen, and I remember way back in the day, I had applied for a job at AMC, and even then too, they were saying that how we do business is not that we have a certain time and we close. If they find that a popular film is selling out, and they said, all right, let's open up another screen, and if that sells out, they'll keep doing it until in the morning. If it's way in the morning before the next screen doesn't sell out, then they'll do that. So that's been an AMC policy, I think, way back in the day. But now that's just it. Like, especially with everything in digital now, it's supply and demand. If all the screenings are being sold out, they're gonna open it to as many screens as possible until they meet that demand. So yeah, 350 million worldwide. That's the biggest opening of all time for domestic.
Yeah, 350 domestic.
Yeah,
Which the actual went up to 357.
357, right? Which is exactly 100 million over the previous box office.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1.2 billion worldwide, which 330 of that belongs to China, and the rest is other markets. But Jesus Christ, that's a huge opening. Like, what did you think when you saw that?
I knew it was going to be big. I didn't think it was going to hit 300.
Right.
I thought it was. Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it's almost obvious. You know, everyone who's ever been invested in these movies wanted to see it as soon as they could, and in a weird way, fear of spoilers on Twitter,
right,
made people want to see it as soon as they could, so that they could rejoin the conversation.
Right.
Not that anyone adds anything to the conversation, but they want to be part of it to pretend like they do. But that's a whole other thing.
Right.
Kind of like Game of Thrones. Everyone was talking about, everything that happened in episode 3. If they could see it, depending on what kind of TV they were using.
Right.
But, ugh. But that's something that pretty much anyone can watch. It's a lot easier to get an HBO subscription than it is to, go out to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows that every once in a while they say, oh, the movie business is dying. No one's going to the movies anymore, and part of that is why they track box office dollars rather than attendance.
Mm-hmm.
But any way you cut it, this was an event like no other. It's evidence that Marvel was playing the long game. As big as Avengers 1 was,
Mm-hmm.
that was just the beginning. They were playing the long game.
Right. Now I gotta ask, right? So when the first Avengers came out, the box office on the first Avengers didn't necessarily reflect how many people saw the previous films before that, which led many to speculate that even people who didn't see Iron Man 1 and 2 and Hulk and all those movies went to see Avengers, right? It was such a event that a lot of people just had to see it, even if they didn't see any movies before it. And flash forward to Infinity War, with the amount of money Infinity War made, I think people made that same assumption, right? Where it's like, it was such an event that people who weren't even following, or maybe just saw 3 or 4 films in the franchise, but a lot more people who are dedicated to the MCU saw this film in theaters. Now with Endgame making so much money, now this is the 22nd film in the MCU that I would say, out of all the movies in the MCU, your enjoyment really, really, really is dependent on how closely you're following this 22 film saga. Are we to assume that a lot of people who've never seen, or maybe only seen 1 or 2 movies, a large percentage of those people saw Endgame?
I think that Endgame's box office success is a testament to the idea that Marvel has had that a lot of other studios don't have.
Mm-hmm.
That is, we're going to make these movies and they're going to be trendy and they're going to be hip.
Mm-hmm.
But this is important. They're also going to be good.
Right.
These movies have a life on DVD and Blu-ray and HBO and Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And in the future, Disney Plus.
Right.
These are not movies like Transformers where you go, I haven't seen Transformers 2 since I saw it in the movies.
Right.
I haven't seen Transformers 4 since I saw it in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And, I only caught the last night on Netflix or HBO or something.
Yeah, that was the worst one he did. Oh my god.
Ugh. Ugh. I like legitimately bad, and I don't like using that term because I think that there's so much that you can enjoy even in quote unquote bad movies, but wow, that movie was bad.
The guy used 3 different cameras to shoot the movie. That's amateur levels right there.
Like, I love Anthony Hopkins, but I don't want to see a movie about giant robots fighting each other and he's the best thing in it.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But whatever, that's another conversation.
Right.
These movies, the Marvel movies, built up such goodwill over time, and they've developed such a broad audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they conveyed that if you're into any of that, you're gonna see it continued and concluded in Endgame. And if you're not into that, then just the idea of it being a continuation, a conclusion, the end, brought people into Endgame.
Right. Which is funny, right? It's like, they're so smart. They know they're making other movies after this. Plenty of other movies. They're not out of the Marvel business.
In like 2 months.
Right? But it's just like, they just marketed this thing as, this is the end. The journey that started in 2008. This will be the end of that journey. But
it is.
It is. And I can't say, oh, they tricked us on that front. It is truly, but is in as much as we'll get down to it at the end. But as much as it is an end, it is a beginning to a lot of stories that will hopefully will dazzle us. Just as this, which brings me to the question: will we ever see an event like this ever again? I mean, a lot of people are proclaiming that this will never be duplicated, but there's a lot of things that happened in the past that people said, "Oh, will never be duplicated," and it did. You know what I'm saying? Like Star Wars will never be the same again, and then The Force Awakens came out and just pretty much schooled a lot of folks. So could we see something like this again? I mean, the only other property going on right now that is reaching this peak level of fandom and event level status is on TV, which is Game of Thrones, right? So, and even then, I have to ask the same thing with Game of Thrones. Like, will there be a television event like Game of Thrones? May 19th will be his final episode, and I guarantee you, May 19th will be one of the biggest days for event ever. Just like how this weekend was a big event for the Avengers. So could we see, since we're talking about movies, could we see an event like this? Like, could Marvel himself replicate that, like 10 years down the line? You know,
I think that Marvel is smart enough to know that they can't copy themselves because they've seen people copy them and they've seen it not work out.
right?
Not gonna point fingers at Ben Affleck. Not gonna point fingers at Henry Cavill.
Right.
Not gonna point fingers at Zack Snyder. Not gonna point fingers at Joss Whedon, who DC brought on, or Warner Brothers brought on, to replicate his success with the Avengers, and that just doesn't work. If we've seen it, audiences are dumb. Like, they're dumb. I can't oversell how dumb they are.
Yeah.
But they know when they're being tricked. They know when they're being asked to see the same thing that they saw again and pretend like they haven't seen it before.
Right.
So I think that Marvel is smart enough to, going forward, whatever they've got planned for Phase 4, 5, 6, and beyond, the next arc, the Doctor Doom arc, the Dormammu arc, whatever they decide to do, it's gonna be different.
Yeah. Yep.
So it won't replicate. It might replicate some of the feelings. It might, replicate just the waxing and waning of going big and going small and back and forth. But it's not going to be, oh, that's like from Endgame.
Yeah, yeah. And they got a lot of work to do because a lot of people fell in love with these core characters, and a lot of people are fighting back already before they even see anything, fighting back the idea that these sort of second tier characters are going to be at the forefront, and they're like, no, I don't like it. I was like, chill, calm down. I'm sure Marvel will figure out a way to make you fall in love with these characters. Which, yeah.
Captain America was a second tier character when his movie came out.
Yeah.
176 million.
Yeah.
Endgame made that in like
one night.
Yeah, less.
Right.
What was the preview showing? Like just Thursday night was 60 million, right? Yeah. So they made that in a day.
Yep.
He was a B tier character. Iron Man was a B tier character when he didn't even have a movie yet.
Right.
Marvel knows how to make these characters pop without like forcing them on you and saying this is the guy who you should like.
Right.
They're not doing what's the wrestling guy we were talking about?
What? Dave?
No, the one who they tried to make a big star even though no one wanted it.
Oh, Roman Reigns.
Yeah, they're not gonna do a Roman Reigns.
Right.
And if they do, we'll notice and we'll call them out for it.
Right.
And they'll go back. They'll change their mind.
Right. Can you hear something in the background?
A little bit.
Another voice?
Yeah.
All right. Hold on. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about the box office and how great it did, and I'm sure Marvel, it'll happen in our lifetime where someone will replicate the success. Not replicate, but just find a different way. Even Marvel themselves, with the direction they're going, could probably do something so drastically different than the way how they did things before that it'll be just as intriguing and feel like a different thing. But since we're on Endgame now, let's talk about our initial thoughts. What was your? You've seen it once. I've seen it 3 times. So your first time seeing, what was your thoughts as coming out of that theater after you finished seeing the movie?
Um, just a lot of tears, a lot of crying, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
solo crying.
Right.
Um, a lot of a little bit of wistfully wishing I had seen it on a bigger screen.
Right.
I saw it on a pretty small screen at the Alamo Draft House in Yonkers,
Mm-hmm.
New York. Um, just a feeling of satisfaction that a thing with so many stories, and we see it a lot on TV as well. Probably more than we see it in the movies,
Mm-hmm.
is the quest for more sequels.
Right.
We see, you know, Spider-Man 3 or just any superhero conclusion that's advertised as a conclusion always ends with a sequel hook.
Mm-hmm.
And go, oh, you don't know what that word means. Um, and it's so funny, even though Endgame plants so many seeds, and even when it doesn't plant seeds, just we know behind the scenes that there's a million more movies coming.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the end.
It is.
And it doesn't just feel like the end, it is the end
Mm-hmm.
for this generation of Marvel.
Right.
A lot of these characters are going to be back in the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be back in the next couple of years worth of movies. But it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new status quo. They don't snap their fingers and return everything to the way it was.
Right.
It has real consequences. It's another one of those things we've seen now. How many people were wrong? A thing that we've talked about the past few episodes is how everyone thinks that they know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everyone goes, oh, obviously this character's going to die and this character's going to live and this is going to happen and that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll get 9 out of their 10 predictions wrong, and they'll get one right, like an obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll go, oh yeah, see, I knew exactly what was going to happen all along. And you can either roll your eyes and move on, or beat the shit out of them. And whichever way you do, it's gonna continue of people going, oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen. And they're gonna be 99% wrong, but they're gonna think that.
Yeah, a broken clock is right twice a day. So
Yeah, they're gonna take that 1% and take it as an absolute certainty.
Yeah. Where did you get that from?
Dick Cheney.
Right. So yeah, my initial thoughts. Well, first I saw this 2 a.m. in the morning. That was my first showing. 2 a.m. in the morning at IMAX. At number one, and they started late. It was supposed to be 2 o'clock. They started at 2:30, and I thought, oh, because it's IMAX. Because sometimes when they show films in IMAX, they don't show previews. So my thing was like, maybe they're starting it late because people think there's gonna be previews, but no, it started at 2:30 and they still had 20 minutes of previews, which meant it was close to 3 o'clock when this movie started. And I was so worried that I was gonna fall asleep. Right? It was like that fatigue will just trump my excitement in this movie. And at one point, not during the movie, but waiting for it, I kind of felt a little bit like maybe I should just close my eyes just a little bit and get a power nap. But it's so late that power nap might become a nap, right?
You'll wake up at like the very end and go, oh no, I missed it.
Right? So, but then once the movie got started, especially towards the third act, adrenaline took over, and I gotta say, like, people ask me how this movie was for me, and I said I can't tell you any other film that I've ever had this kind of experience in, where it was just like one of the best experiences of my entire life watching, especially that third act. Like, just, and I'm not usually one to sort of applause, yeah, or make sounds, I like when the audience do it, because it kind of, I feel the energy, and once in a while I do a clap or two, or do a little woo, or here or there, but like, just throughout the entire movie, or throughout like an entire section, I'm never usually like that, and I just like, the crowd was so infectious that, and what was happening on the screen just demanded you to yell and cheer and cheer and yell and cheer. It's like the entire audience was just erupting, and I just felt it. It's just, I've never felt. And to me, you know what the closest to that I've ever had, and you won't believe the movie that gave me that close to that. You won't believe
Fast
it.
Five.
No, it's not a genre film. It's You Got Served.
I've seen that movie many times.
Because at the time I was working in a movie theater at the time, and at the time that movie came out, the B2K, which is the R&B group, was out. They were the hottest thing in R&B, and so a lot of sort of teenagers were in the theater, and I saw it for free, so I was like, let me just check out this movie. And when the movie began, it felt like I was at a concert. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's funny because when the movie starts, you hear like a crowd like in the background, like screaming, like at a concert, and then you hear it in the theater as well. So it's like doubled the amount of screaming you were hearing in the theater, because you hear it in the audience and you hear it on screen. But yeah, that was like the closest. But Endgame just eclipsed that. Like, and I just couldn't wait to see it again, because I was going to see it 2 more times, because I already had tickets for the Friday evening and the Saturday evening, that I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this movie again, to get that feeling again. Because I know, like, regardless of people who've seen it opening weekend or opening day or whatever, that scene will just demand people to cheer. And I just couldn't wait for that, So I was like,
Yeah, I cheered. I did one of these where I just clapped my hands once and was just like, yeah. I think I did that twice.
Right.
Obviously, we're going into big, huge spoilers. So the episode probably got a flashing logo that says spoilers, because we're gonna have spoilers nonstop, and the first ones we're dropping right now. I cheered at the first time I cheered was just because I thought it was so funny. It was not a cheer moment, and I think people laughed at me because I laughed. When Cap said, "I can do this all day."
Yeah, and he's like,
I know.
Yeah.
That I just lost it, because I love that line so much. That kind of catchphrase acknowledgement.
Yeah.
I liked, and then of course, that hammer.
Oh yes, yeah.
I wish that we could go. The archives of this podcast are so deep, but it's like 2012 or something.
Yeah.
I'm not the first. A million people have made this prediction, but we have evidence of me going, that's what I want.
Yeah.
At some point, it's gonna be Cap with his shield in one hand, his hammer in the other.
I think I even remember that conversation too. You were like, "Oh, you wanted that," and I was like, "Oh, there's precedent for it because it happens in the comics." And you were like, "Oh, really? Awesome!" And yeah, we thought that was definitely something they were heading down to. I mean, they teased it a little bit in Ultron, which you heard the theory that he could actually lift it. He just didn't want to embarrass Thor. That was
I heard that theory, but I don't believe it, because I think that he becomes worthy afterwards.
Right.
I think that he. Do we know how long he knew that Bucky had killed Tony's parents?
Since Winter Soldier.
Yeah, if he knew all the way. Oh, he found out like when he was in Zola's bunker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if he knew that then
Mm-hmm.
and didn't tell Tony, that doesn't sound like that. He doesn't
Yeah.
sound very worthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 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 he got there.
Yep.
He earned it. He proved himself worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Just man, you said you saw it at 2 a.m. I saw it at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Saturday I had nothing to do, so I went to my parents' house like the night before
Mm-hmm.
because I knew I was going to be seeing it in Yonkers and I didn't want to leave at like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
my house. So Saturday I woke up and I just immediately at like 9 in the morning put on Age of Ultron.
Yeah. You know what's so funny about Age of Ultron? And I've been saying this. I've been praising Age of Ultron for a long time, and a lot of people. I mean, I don't consider it the best Avengers movie, but I still feel what Joss brought to it, and we talked about it during our retrospective. What Joss brought to it was just, it's a miracle that that movie got done, right? Um, and it seeded so many events, and to see it still being called back in the end game. um, I know a lot of people who called me and said, "Hey, they watched the movie and it's like, holy crap! Like they just initially missed half of the movie. How important that movie was uh, to setting up a whole bunch of stuff." Now you could say that's a bad thing, like that movie's all set up and no payoff or whatever. But I mean, the movie paid off its own story. It's just that it seeded things to the point you didn't notice it was seeding things, and I consider that a good thing, right?
Yeah,
Like if you didn't notice, oh, it's setting up this and it's setting up that, then that's not a bad thing at all. It just means that when you go back to watching it again after knowing what comes ahead, then you have another layer of enjoyment of the movie.
yeah, it's a thing where it does tell its own story.
Mm-hmm.
It is a self-contained, the MCU movies, a thing that they do
Mm-hmm.
is that they tell self-contained stories, with very few exceptions. There are some cliffhangers here and there,
Right.
um, but if you're into it, if you're willing to like do that extra work in observing,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're willing to kind of leverage comic book knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
you can go, oh, this is a hint towards this is a hint towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't until like the watching Age of Ultron on like home video years later
Mm-hmm.
that I saw that the gems in the sky and Thor's dream were attached to like a ghostly Infinity Glove
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
gauntlet.
Yeah.
Like I just never noticed it,
Yeah.
and even if I had, I probably wouldn't have made the connection because I knew the gauntlet from you,
Mm-hmm.
but not from like the movies or
Right.
anything like
Right.
that. Um, then once you do know and you go back, you can see it
Mm-hmm.
and you go, oh, of course,
Mm-hmm.
like that's so cool. But the movie always makes that secondary to telling its own story, and it's a thing that was a problem with something like, not to poke fingers at Batman v Superman, but that was all set up to stuff that never happened
Yeah, and it
and was
broke
never going to happen.
it broke the initial narrative that it was telling. Like I still hate that transition where Bruce is breaking down the decrypting the thing, and all of a sudden it goes black, and pretty much another movie takes over for 30 for 10 minutes, however long that sequence was, before it comes back to the narrative. It still feels jarring to me, to the point where, as cool as that scene looked, I would have cut it. I would have said nah.
Yeah. Or made it the opening.
Opening of the movie. That should have been the opening of the movie, and that actually sets the tone for the idea of that he and Superman are gonna go at it. Like put that
Yeah,
in the beginning of the
or
movie.
even the post credits maybe, or something. But that scene is compared to Thor's little vision quest in the underwater cave.
Mm-hmm.
Except Thor's little vision quest in the underwater cave is like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Uh, and it relates to this movie.
Yeah, he
Does
manages
it,
to bring it back when he helps Vision be born, pretty much.
yeah, like if you cut that the I don't even, what do they even call the scene in Batman v Superman?
The Nightmare Batman sequence.
If
Nightmare
they if
sequence.
they If they were to cut that, it would make zero difference in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all, even when it's planting seeds for future stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it also relates to this movie.
Yeah.
Like, Cap, and one of my favorite scenes in Age of Ultron is Cap and Iron Man cutting wood
Yeah.
in the backyard, and that is planting so many seeds for Civil War, but it's also they're at each other's throats now,
Mm-hmm.
and it directly relates to that.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I don't want to turn it into MCU victory lap trashing over DC,
Right.
because I think that DC's got what it takes. We'll see what happens in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Those characters are so amazing that even if they mess up, they can bring it back around, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll be happy to see them succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows planning ahead, planting seeds, but not forgetting about the movie that you're making right now.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, Marvel's definitely good at that, and pays off in so many ways. So, all right. So we don't miss a whole bunch of things here. I decided to break it down by characters, and the first character I want to talk about is Nebula. Now, Nebula started from in Guardians of the Galaxy. She was a C tier villain. She didn't have that much screen time, but the additional idea was that she's the sister of Gamora and one of the daughters of Thanos, and you could get little bits in that film that she wants her father's approval, but because her father considers Gamora her favorite, that at some point she said, what, screw it, I hate you, and decides she wanted to team up with Ronan to help take down Thanos. And that's a little you got of her, but you saw a little bit of hint that Gamora still wanted her sister to be on her side, which never happened. By the end of that movie, she rather tear her arm off and escape than admit that Gamora is right. Then you saw her again in Guardians Volume 2. She had a bigger role in that film, and in that film, the relationship between Gamora and Nebula reached a crescendo where it's like she finally admitted that all she wanted is sister, and all it is that every time they're in battle and Gamora proved, like, Gamora, and that added another layer to Gamora, right? Where even though Gamora always talked about how she hated being the daughter of Thanos, that she just still did everything Thanos wanted, as evidenced by the fact that she has no augmentation. She's always beating everyone. She's always been the favorite, the baddest, the most dangerous woman on the planet, because she's always followed Thanos' orders. So the layer is that she always verbally said she hated Thanos, but in reality she was so attached to Thanos. And I would say what that shows for Nebula is that she, even though she had love for Thanos, she loved Gamora's more, and she wanted Gamora's approval that much more than Thanos's, which the Guardians Volume 2 revealed. She showed up a little bit in Infinity War, but this movie, her role is expanded, and you saw much different Nebula, who've grown.
Literally.
Yeah, right. Which and then to really show the contrast, you see the Nebula interacting with her past self, and you can literally see the growth in one screen with the two Nebulas and their philosophy. One, the 2014 Nebula being scared and unsure, and the Nebula that we know saying, screw it, like, I will never be a slave to Thanos again. And I just really enjoyed that aspect of it, and to the point where she's a lot more woke than Gamora is. Even though,
yeah, I mean, because we've got Gamora right before she changed her mind.
Right. Yeah.
Like, this Gamora is Gamora who's about to betray Thanos, but has not committed to it yet, and she needs a push because of the way the movie plays out.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a reversal. Although I do want to go back to what you said about Gamora and her relationship with Thanos and Nebula,
Mm-hmm.
because that I actually hadn't thought about it
Mm-hmm.
in that term of being someone who vocally rallies against a system that is bad,
Mm-hmm.
but who also actively benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like someone who goes, "I hate racism.
Yeah.
Also, white privilege isn't real." That's Gamora.
Right. Right.
That's so good. I had not thought of that at all.
Yeah, man. It's just, and it's funny that it comes from all the sort of development of Gamora. As much as you see her on screen getting developed and with her backstory and everything, a lot of that heavy lifting comes from Nebula, because you get to see Nebula voice her opinion on what she thinks of Gamora. You know what I mean? Like, even in the first Guardians, where she blows Gamora out of the sky, she said, it's a shame because you're the favorite of all my siblings." That's a seed to saying her, like, all I wanted was a sister. And we'll talk about that later in setup, and we'll talk about the next phase. It'll be interesting to see how this Nebula interact more with past Gamora, considering now they're almost like on the same footing with Nebula a little bit more, because Nebula has experienced a little bit more than, well, 9 years more than this Nebula. But then this Gamora. But this Gamora was, since she was on that stage to being woke, she'll catch up a little bit faster. But it'll be almost like Nebula's on this even playing field as this Gamora, where they can actually move on to being sisters than adversaries. Um,
And I was already so excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
oh my god!
But now,
Yeah,
especially with who else may or may not be joining the team,
right?
forget about it. And it's funny, we're like, ooh, we don't want to do spoilers, even though we've just spoiled everything.
Yeah, right.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So I loved Nebula's arc in it. She had a lot more to do in this movie, and I even like that scene she had, that small scene she shared with Rhodey, where they're on the Morag, and she went in, she grabbed the Power Stone, and her arm almost burned to a crisp, but she didn't feel anything, and it, for a little bit. And I liked Karen Gillan's acting right there, right, where she notices that Rhodey looked at her arm, and she quickly, like, like she's ashamed of it, because she normally does that. She doesn't care. But just seeing Rhodey look at her in a way, she was like, oh crap, and she kind of hides it a little bit, and she tries to play it off like, I'm not always like this. But then Rhodey sympathizes with her, is like, I wasn't either because of his legs, but we work.
Yeah, his legs, which aren't even broken.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the little machine that Tony built for him, But
Can't you see I'm crippled? I have lights on my legs.
yeah, I want to know how severe is, because they said it in Civil War that he has a spinal fracture. Is that what they said in Civil War?
Yeah, some of his, yeah, definitely part of his spine is broken, and he has some kind of paralysis.
Right, like, does his junk work or something like that? Like, I mean,
Maybe not. Maybe we won't have little roadies. Well, half roadie, half Nebula.
mm-hmm.
Roadies. No, that's gonna be Tony Stark's cameo in War Machine the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna be a hologram, and he's gonna say, Rhodey, right before we went to go fight Thanos, I was working on this project for you. It's boner pills for cripples. and then he hooks up with Nebula, and boom,
Yeah.
he got space babies.
Yeah, so I like that whole interaction between the two. It was a little sweet moment. And even going back to sweet moments with Nebula, the beginning of it, when she's taking care of Tony, when Tony's like the mean blue lady when he's narrating to Pepper. But she's taking care of him, and when he's all weak and stuff, she's like, because she's augmented, so she doesn't need as much sustenance as he does. And she's like, no, you have the food because I see you're weakening. And then when he's about to, She's literally put him on his deathbed, well, death chair, because he was about to die at that moment before Captain Marvel came. And that sort of like sorrow, sorrowful look on her face, yeah, she's really grown, man. Like from the destroy them to I like that evolution and
Yeah, she's fantastic, and I guess now might be the time to mention it because it's not such a big part of the movie is time travel,
right.
and it's seeing her and her past self and seeing how much she's changed in only 5 years to the
Mm-hmm.
point where she executes her past self when she threatens her friend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, fortunately, because of the weird rules of time travel, it's not like she kills herself. She doesn't erase herself or
Mm-hmm.
anything when they travel back in time. It took me a little while to kind of like, oh, okay, now I get it. They basically create an alternate reality when they go back
Mm-hmm.
so that they can bring stuff back and it doesn't ruin everything.
Yeah, I should have put it on our list. But you know what? Let's talk about time travel before I forget, because we have a list to go, and I don't want to forget time travel. Even though we'll probably touch upon it a little bit when we talk about different characters. But let's talk about time travel and the rule they set up in this movie. That I've been reading and watching a lot of people's sort of ideas on it, and some people even said the movie itself even broke their own rule that they set up with Captain America, right?
Hmm.
So the idea of their time travel is that nothing they do in the past will affect their present. And how I see it, so I had to put like a visual how it is then, right? They're not using a machine per se like in Back to the Future, where they're using the DeLorean to go back into a linear past. What they're doing is using the quantum realm to go out into a past of another reality, right? That's
Yep.
how to fully explain this thing, to say this will not affect our timeline, because we're not going into our past, we're going into a past of a parallel reality, right? um
Right. It's basically like instead of a Back to the Future 2 thing where if you look at yourself, you destroy the universe.
mhm.
Uh, it's you know you can't go to your own past because you weren't there.
Right, right.
Like Captain America didn't fight Captain America right after the Avengers off screen, and we just never noticed it.
Mhm.
That didn't happen.
and
That's a different
and,
universe.
and you know what, and to be fair, Doctor Strange actually sets this thing up too, where uh in a minor scene where the Ancient One creates a mirror universe, is that you can practice and do anything you want in this mirror universe. It won't affect our universe. So there are multiple universes out there that mirror our own. Some of them is actually a reality unto itself. And she said, Ancient One says it again in Endgame, where she says, "Yeah, you might take a stone away from this reality, but it'll create a branching reality in my reality that might destroy my reality." So you got to be more mindful of mine. Yeah, your reality would be set, but what about mine? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Which is it's a great way to do it because you don't have to do the whole time travel pratfall of, oh, we have to set right what went wrong. Like
yeah,
we're already dealing with that now.
yeah.
We're dealing with that in our own reality. We don't. Not every time travel movie needs to be Back to the Future Part Two.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Back to the Future Part Two. In fact, it's a little closer to Back to the Future Part Two than it is to Back to the Future Part One,
Mm-hmm.
but still different. Um, but yeah, they don't have to deal with those preconceived rules that everyone thinks they know how time travel works.
Yeah. So
Everyone thinks they know what's going to happen in Avengers. Everyone thinks they know how time travel works.
so
Well, Avengers says how time travel works now, and that's what you have to deal with it. It's me now, just deal with it.
yeah, and then so the thing about Captain America, how he went back in the past, had a life with Peggy, and then that means he's been living in our entire timeline as regular Steve till he's old Steve. where he shows up at the end. So people are wondering about that. So what does that mean? It's like Peggy's been married to that Steve all along? No. This is my theory until I'm proven wrong. My theory is that he went into a past, lived his life into a version of his reality, and then by the time it came to him bringing Falcon the shield, he somehow traveled to our reality to give him the shield. You know what I mean? It's not that he's
Yeah.
been living in our past, because then that would bring up so much paradoxes. For one, you're gonna tell me he's living in our past and knowing that Hydra has infiltrated Shield. That's so much burden on him. He would have to keep that shit a secret for everything to play out. If he, say he went into the past and he said, you know what, I don't want to affect the future, he would have to keep his presence a secret from so many people. He will have to keep the presence of Hydra within Shield a secret from even Peggy herself, and so many other people. He would have to let Howard die. He would have to let the Battle of New York happen without raising any flags to anyone. Like, that's so much of a burden on anyone. Like, that's not a life well lived. So
that would be great if they revisit like the multiverse stuff,
mm-hmm.
and at some point they go to because the way I see it, either way works.
Mm-hmm.
It works the way you said it, which is more likely and follows like the rules of the time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Or it also works if you just go with it and just say, yeah, he went back to his own timeline,
mm-hmm.
his own past, and fixed it, and like was just waiting around the corner when they sent back his his present day self.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as they go, he just walks over to the bench and it's just like, aha, like it's a beautiful enough image that however you want to justify it, just go with that. But going to your theory, and I think the more logical one,
mm-hmm.
Would be if at some point they go to another timeline and it's that timeline and they see like the world is completely different because Captain America basically never died.
Right.
That would be something to see, like how the world would be different
mm-hmm.
if Captain America was there and rooted out Shield.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had knowledge from the future.
Yeah.
That,
know what's funny? I don't think that's a thing that Marvel is just gonna step over. I think their plans, not necessarily with Cap. I mean, you could involve Cap, but I think their plans to deal with that multiverse thing, that there are multiple universes. I mean, there's a comic book here that does deal with it called Secret Wars, that has the sort of comic books leading up to Secret Wars that have the multiple Earths sort of battling to be the center of the universe. So I think this is something they'll tackle down the line. But for now, they just want to keep it this beautiful moment without having you break your brain out of it, even though a lot of people are already breaking their brains over it.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna break their brains no matter what.
Yeah.
They're gonna break their brains over something.
Yeah. So I mean, I find a simple way to answer it without breaking my brain. It's just a multiverse theory. It's just other films.
It's exactly the way the movie has been operating up to this point.
Yeah. Doctor Strange sets the multiverse theory up, and this plays with it a lot more. So yeah. That's it. I just wanted to address the time travel concept before we forget about it. And then now we can move on to Rhodey. His role, I mean, he doesn't have a lot to do in it other than to do his thing in missions and stuff like that. But I like his story, how it's when he went with Nebula. That was one of the most significant parts of it, where I feel a little bit of kinship between the two of them. I mean, I don't think they'll explore that any further, but I like that little adventure, that mini adventure they went with.
Yeah, and I just even if they didn't work out, even if they were like lame together,
yeah,
I just love that these Avengers movies. And I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot more. We talked before about how Phase 3 was all about taking stuff from one sandbox and putting it in another sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a lot of that in Phase 3, with Hulk and Thor and Doctor Strange and Thor, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that moving forward,
Yeah.
of Thor and the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, whoever else. We've got Nick Fury and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's technically Phase 3, blah, 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 blah. But that, even if it didn't work out, just seeing my Rhodey action figure and my Nebula action figure getting to play together
Yeah.
is like that's part of what we go to these movies to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We go to see them mix and match in a way that movies just never did until the Avengers. And we're lucky that it works.
Yep.
In this case, if they had no chemistry, we'd go, oh well, and then move on.
Yeah.
Or if it didn't work, then they'd have, looking at Chris Pratt go through the opening titles of Guardians of the Galaxy, but without it being shot like a music video, which I think is so good.
Yeah, I love that scene.
So well.
I love.
And when it cuts to them watching him and he's singing, but there's no music.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's done so well because
So he's an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm 100% guilty of doing that all the time when I'm walking home by myself, just from the train or walking wherever. I'm in a music video.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I am the coolest person on the planet. I am John Travolta walking down the street in Saturday Night Fever. If anyone is watching me, they go, so he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. It's the deal that I make with myself.
Yeah. So that's Rhodey. I like, he did his thing for what he had to do in the movie. I liked his role. Then we move on to Captain Marvel. Now, Captain Marvel has experienced a lot of fight back from certain fans and even people who have some people have legitimate concerns. I would say some people brought up legitimate concerns where it's like, yes, she's part of the MCU, but she came in late in the game. Like, we were here for the original OG characters. Is she just gonna come in and play a Deus Ex Machina and just clean up everything? As presented in her films, like, she's powerful, right?
Yeah, she takes out Ronan's fleet.
Right? So how, so where's the drama if she's just gonna be there to just destroy everyone, right? So that was one of the concerns, even amongst level-minded people who aren't preaching anti-SJW crap nonsense. People who are concerned, like, wow, her power level. You're dealing with the Superman conundrum, right? Like, Superman is so powerful. Like, why does he have to team with anyone?
Right. And in Superman's case, they always do give him like some stupid weakness. Like, Superman is he's weak to magic.
Yeah,
that's it. He's weak to magic.
Right.
And Superman's just being like, what? Why? Don't worry about it. Because if you're not, then this big crisis crossover will be like 2 pages long.
Yeah. So, she's basically that powerful. So how will the Russos handle her? And the way they handle her, I think, was probably the only way you could, and it was the smartest way you could do it, right? Like, the movie begins, which I kind of predicted based on the trailers, I guess, how the structure of the movie would be, where, and we'll talk about Black Widow in a bit, but with Black Widow's, with her hair, right? That hair kind of gave away the idea that there will be some time jumps, right? Starting with her blonde hair, and now it's red with the blonde tips, right? But then it's like, okay, so obviously they want to deal with Thanos, but how would the movie handle the whole Thanos situation? So I kind of had in my head that they'll deal with Thanos right at the beginning of the movie, and there'll be some sort of confrontation, whether he wins or loses, or that confrontation, something significant would happen where whatever they did at that confrontation didn't work, and they would have to live with the fact that that didn't work, and then time travel would have to do it to be brought in. So now, bringing in Captain Marvel right in the beginning of that, and you saw how powerful she is when she took out Thanos, like boom, right?
Oh yeah.
A weakened Thanos, and she's like choking, giving him a chokehold, and then but he's a weakened Thanos, and the conflict eventually is meaningless because he got rid of the stones. So her having all the powers in the world didn't mean anything at that scene. So I think that was smart. It's like, okay, yeah, she's powerful, but she can't bring back people because he got rid of the stones.
She's not a scientist, so she's more. I mean, she's more than a blunt object,
right?
But she, she's not the Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also not. She will have a different dynamic from Captain America moving forward.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about her being, the de facto because she's got Captain in her name.
Yeah, which I don't even think. I don't think. I mean, maybe, but I don't think she'll be the de facto leader. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the closest that they come to that is like they do have the shot where she's holding his gauntlet and he's, in the last fight.
Yeah.
And it's very, very similar to the scene in Infinity War. Except when he goes to headbutt her, she just doesn't even flinch.
Right?
Then he tricks her with the Power Stone. Mm-hmm. But again, that shows that she's not necessarily as tactical. She's a little, maybe even cocky with her powers,
right?
Which I think could be really cool going forward. Of her going like, "Hey, I'm the strongest person in the world,
mm-hmm.
but I need to, learn how to fight."
Mm-hmm.
Not in like a shit, not shitty, but like not in a sexist way, like with Jude Law saying, "No, you need to tie both of your hands behind your back, and then if you can beat me, then you're good."
Yeah,
like it's so good when she's just like, "Fuck you, Jude Law." But kind of like, what is it? It's in the comics, right? Doesn't Muhammad Ali teach Superman how to fight or something?
Yeah.
Like that's cool. Like it's silly and ridiculous. But like Batman teaches Superman how to fight also, right? He's like, you are the strongest person in the world, but let me give you some skills.
Right.
I would love to see like a Bucky sparring with Captain Marvel, and she's like, why can't I just pummel you into the earth?
Yeah, I was thinking that too, because I was gonna get around to the, like, especially for future films. She's a narrative problem. She's gonna be a narrative problem
because she's so strong,
right? Like, how do you because okay, so going back to how the Russos handled her is like, okay, you saw her in the beginning of this movie, she did her things, like she's powerful, but at the end power means nothing because it's not gonna get everyone back. And then it flashes 5 years later. By the way, that 5 years later, the way how they put the title card, 5 years later, like every time I saw it in the theater, the audience went, like, because they weren't expecting that. Like, what? Right? So, the idea is that and I like her new costume, too. It's pretty cool. I like her haircut.
I love the hair. It
looks really good. The idea is that they took her off the board for a good amount of time because she has to go around the universe.
Earth isn't the only planet crisis.
Which I think, if I were Marvel and the creative team, I would actually build off of that she's running herself ragged, right? Like, yes, she may be that powerful in the world, but she's not, she got a little bit of a humble pie with Thanos, right? She's very powerful, but Thanos, for a couple of times, even before he hit her with the Power Stone, he body slams her, he throws her across the room.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty evenly matched.
So
they're evenly matched in terms of strength,
mm-hmm.
but and she's probably even stronger.
Yeah, she's stronger.
She's stronger than he is, but he's got the tactics that apparently are like a big part of his comic persona.
Yes.
Which we don't necessarily really see until that final battle
mm-hmm.
in Endgame,
mm-hmm.
but where he's able to beat her using more than strength. And I think that I think that is a seed that is planted
mm-hmm.
to be like, oh, she is the strongest person in the galaxy, basically,
mm-hmm.
Especially now that Thanos is dead. But she still has stuff to learn.
Yeah, like
Uh,
and I'm just wondering if down the line they'll find a way to depower her. Not depower like take away her power, but just like bring her power down a level. Um, which you know what? Come to think of it, right? Uh, uh, the stones in our timeline now they don't exist,
yeah, they're
right?
gone.
And her power was derived from the Tesseract. I'm wondering if that will have some side effect to her power, where
I don't think so because she already has it.
yeah,
It
yeah,
means that if she loses it, she can't get it back.
right,
But I don't think that they would take her power away. I think they'll just find a way to, whatever they're fighting, there will also be a big thing that she has to do.
yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of like how the Hulk didn't get to participate that much in the big fight here because he had to hold the building up
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to keep it from crushing Rocket and Rhodey
yeah,
and other people. Um, it'll be, oh, we've got an army down here, and he's throwing a planet at another planet. She'll
yeah,
be like, okay, she won't go, Drax, you stop the planet from hitting the other planet. I'll
mhm,
fight these guys.
yeah, yeah,
She'll go, I'll go stop the planet from hitting the other planet. You fight these guys.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't.
yeah, I think that that's kind of the future, just in general, because after that battle,
Mhm.
you can't do another ground battle.
Yeah, like I don't.
Like,
I don't envy the writers, man. I don't envy because they'll have to figure out a way. And I think I noticed that with a lot of these powerful, especially powerful female, they fans usually hate a powerful female character. Well, I don't even call them fans, just idiots. But
yeah, they're mad at Arya Stark now.
yeah, right. You know what I mean? Arya Stark, Rey, now Captain Marvel, but they have to figure out a way to not appease those, but just make sure that you find some drama in her being that powerful. But I'll tell you this though, I did mention that they will probably in some way down the line depower her or bring down her power level. They'll absolutely do that when she meets Rogue.
Oh, okay.
When I think that's one thing. I mean, it'll probably take a while to get to that, if they even get to that. But when they do get to that, that'll be a moment her powers go not fully gone, but a little bit down when Rogue snatches that power, and I'll love it. But anyway, so Captain Marvel, like, I like when she came in to that final battle when the ships turned their attention up and they're like, "Who is that? What are they firing on?" It's like, "Friday, what's that? Something is in the atmosphere, boss." And then she just comes in like bounds like crazy. And of course that fight with her and Thanos. I just love this. When you mentioned how she's holding up the glove, I like the fact that she kind of lifts in the air and she's breaking his arm. That almost breaks his arm
I
and
thought
stuff.
she was gonna break his fingers.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
just like snap him all the way back.
Yeah, I just love that fight, but I just love it more that Thanos was still managed to like kick her ass. Like Thanos,
Yeah.
even though I don't have him on this list, I'll say this about Thanos, right? We basically saw two different versions of Thanos in Infinity War. It was the philosopher's Thanos, right? He's a Thanos that took off his armor and went on a sort of spiritual quest, right? He was a lot more zen, but brutal. He still kicked ass a little bit. Even if you look at that scene when he still had his armor on, when Hulk is fighting him, when Maul was like, "Oh, let him have his fun." This was like him kind of saying, "Let him shed that last moment of fun Thanos, brutal Thanos, warlord Thanos," right?
Yeah.
And then when he gets the power, no, the space stone, he takes his armor off and he's like, "Now from now on, I'm on the spiritual journey." And you saw him very much like that Thanos towards the end.
Right. Like why? Like he doesn't even need to fight. He's like, why would I need to fight? I have these stones.
Yeah, right.
So even on Titan when he's fighting, he never really does like hand to hand with them, except for Iron Man at the very end.
Yeah,
and he wins.
Yeah, and
But for the most part, his fighting is just using the stones. Like,
yeah,
oh, you're gonna fight me? I'm gonna bring down a moon and
yeah.
throw it at you.
And then you saw a little hint of ruthless Thanos, because I love that scene where he's about to face off with Tony, and he's like, "Come on!" Right? That little is very poster worthy when he's like, "Come get me!" Right? That's a
Yeah.
little him going back to his old ways, enjoying it. But then this Thanos that we saw in Endgame is
No stones.
no stones, armored up, brutal. Like,
Crazy helicopter blade sword.
as a matter of fact, the first time you see him enter the scene, he's wiping his blade of blood. Right? He's just like vicious, right? Oh, and speaking of that helicopter blade thing, a lot of people, I didn't think about it, but someone brought up like it's a little nod to the time you saw Thanos copter in the comic books. Did you know he had a helicopter in the comic books?
I-
It was
that
some,
sounds hilarious.
it was,
Like the Batcopter.
yes, and it had Thanos on the tail. So it was a little nod
That's a
to
deleted
that.
scene. It's a deleted scene.
And he even threw it. Remember, he threw it at Thor, and it made that sound. It's like
That's,
helicopter.
God, comics are so dumb.
So yeah, I just like the contrast where you have vicious Thanos and philosopher Thanos, but this vicious Thanos, like, he was beating everyone up, man. Like, even though you got your moment of Steve holding the hammer, at the end it meant nothing because he
Yeah, it's one of those things where I was very impressed at the beginning when they killed him off.
yeah,
And I was like, I'm satisfied, but also not satisfied because it didn't change anything.
right,
Because he was retired, whether he stayed retired or not, no difference. He would have never gone back to Earth
yeah,
because he was like, nah, I'm done.
yeah. And he was a weakened Thanos. He was half of him was burnt to a
Yeah,
crisp.
which was really great because, like I said, Saturday, the day before I saw the movie, I watched 4 movies. I watched Age of Ultron, Civil War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Infinity War
Uh-huh.
in that order. Because I watched Ant-Man and the Wasp with my mom, who hadn't seen it yet, so we flipped them that way. Which works just the same, basically. And in Infinity War, when he does his snap, you can see his arm is all burned up, and it's even going up a little bit to his neck.
Yeah.
It actually looks a little bit like Tony's not burns, but his what is it, futuristic crossword puzzle, as Fury calls it in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Which is probably not a deliberate nod. It just reminded me of that. Like, there are a lot of deliberate nods. I don't think that was one.
Yeah.
But like, I noticed that when I watched Infinity War, and I hadn't really noticed it before. And then watching Endgame the next day, I was like, okay, all right. Because I bet a lot of people were like, why is he all, what's this new thing about, if he does it, he gets hurt? I hadn't seen that. But one, I could talk, I really like Thanos. There's a bunch of stuff that I could say, but I want to ask you, what do you think would be the case if the movie ended, Infinity War ended,
Right.
with I went for the head?
Meaning he went for the head?
No, meaning the beginning of Endgame was in Infinity War.
Oh, right.
And then Endgame starts with 5 years.
5
later.
years later.
Like Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, that would have worked too. The only issue I think why they wouldn't put it on it, and I think I talked to you about this, where you were saying they should have put the post-credit scene of Infinity War in the section where he had everyone disintegrated.
Which, when I watched Infinity War on Saturday, I was like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm glad it's where it is.
Right. So you would, if they had basically that first 20 minutes or 15 minutes, however long that scene was, that section of Endgame was, at the end of Infinity War, you come up on the same issue again where you're reintroducing a bunch of characters that, or introducing, because at the time we still haven't seen Captain Marvel yet. You're introducing a bunch of characters that we haven't seen for like 2 hours and 20 minutes, right? So it's like it'll be like a jarring effect. Whereas, okay, who's this? Who's Captain Marvel? Because the thing is, the way how Infinity War narratively structured, right? And you got to the end where he where Thor throws the axe at Thanos, and then Thanos snaps and then goes away, and then you hear no music and everybody's disintegrating. That feels like a calm down moment, right? And if you go by how Endgame begins, you'll be on a calm down moment for a long period of time. When people are in the theaters probably looking at their watches like, is this movie gonna end or what? You know what I mean? So it would make sense in a way, like if somebody did like an ultimate cut, like their own cut of their movie.
Right, like I don't do like editing like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love to just see how it plays, like to see Thanos on his his farm,
Mm-hmm.
and you can even see the little scarecrow with his armor for
Yeah.
like one shot
Uh
in the
huh.
corner of the screen in that,
Yeah.
and just like as he's just sitting there smiling, like it cues up traffic. Is Mr. Fantasy sing us a tune? And then it just cuts to them in space.
Right.
I'm like, I think that would be really good.
Yeah, that could work. Um, uh, and you would actually take, because I know what I liked about the way how this begins. It assumed you saw the post credit scene, because I actually thought the post credit scene for Captain Marvel was going to be inserted into the film, kind of like the Civil War thing. But they're like, no, if you saw that, that already happened.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah,
I like that better than the way they did it in Ant-Man to Civil War.
yeah. Uh,
Because it feels like in that movie they just kind of just took a piece and put it in there and was like, well, we gotta have a post credit scene, so just put that in there.
yeah. So they just assumed you saw that scene, and already the Avengers know who Captain Marvel is.
Yeah.
So if you were to do like a long edit, like make Endgame and Infinity War the whole, what did Quentin Tarantino call his Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2? Kill Bill the whole 9 yards.
The whole bloody affair.
Yes, the whole bloody affair. If you did the whole bloody affair for Infinity War and Endgame, you would take the post credit scene from Ant-Man and the Wasp. You would take the post credit scene from Infinity War and the post credit scene for Captain Marvel, insert them in the middle of it, and then go on from there. Yeah, that would be a cool edit. But yeah, it was pretty dope. I love it.
Yeah.
So now, the next character I want to talk about is Black Widow. Wow. She's one of the other major characters in this film that had a lot to do, even though, because I've seen it 3 times. Do you realize that she has no action sequences in that film other than fighting Hawkeye? That was her
Huh.
only action sequence.
Yeah, she doesn't go to space to fight Thanos, right?
No, she's there, but she just,
Right.
uh,
Oh, right. She comes in
yeah,
after. Yeah.
yeah, Cap and her and Rocket coming after. It's
Right. Yep.
Hulk, War
The big
Machine,
guns.
and Captain Marvel and Thor.
Hold him down.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, she has no major action sequences. But the moment that thing hit 5 years later, she's in a different space. She's broken, man. She's broken, especially what she's hearing about Clint and how he's off the deep end now. Which I think that whole thing with Clint, we'll talk about later. That thing, I don't think that whole story is over, and I see how it can continue. But anyway, she's broken. She's like tearing up. I just love that scene where she's hearing Rhodey describe how her friend is murdering everyone, and you're seeing the tears, but she's trying to fight back the tears, and she's eating the sandwich. And then as soon as Rhodey's gone, that's when it's like she's donezo. She's breaking down. But of course, when Cap walks in, she kind of I just love it how she moves from the tears to kind of smiling it, because it's like a breath of fresh air that her best friend is, well, one of her best friends is here to visit her, which is kind of like a mirror image of what happened in Civil War at the funeral, where she visits him and she's like, he thinks like she's there to convince him to join the Sokovia Accords, but he's saying, if you're not here to, if you know that I'm not gonna do it, why are you here? It's like, because you needed a friend, and he's doing the same thing. And by the way, did you pay attention to that conversation? Because you know how the idea of what Thanos did was so that we'll have cleaner air and more resources. He's saying he's coming from Liberty Island over to New York, and he says he notices a bunch of whales, and she says, "Oh, I hope you're not here for me to see the bright side of things, because I'm gonna hurl this peanut butter sandwich at you." So in some regards, what Thanos did kind of worked.
Yeah,
Because there's
the only problem is he didn't. I mean, as he says later in the movie, the resentment overwhelms the resentment at losing half of everyone on the Earth and elsewhere outweighs any potential benefits.
Right. You know what I mean?
To say nothing of if you got rid of half of the trash men in New York, yeah, that'd be a problem.
Yeah. Oh shit! I forgot to put Ant-Man on there, but yeah, we'll get to him. We'll talk a bit about him after. But yeah.
I think thinking about their scene in Civil War, Cap and Black Widow, when she's like, "I thought you needed a friend." I think that she sees camaraderie with him, even going back to Winter Soldier, in that they are two people who don't necessarily have a place in the world without their job.
Yeah, yeah.
At first, that's S.H.I.E.L.D., because he's basically a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent in Winter Soldier. And then it becomes the Avengers. And with, but she's been doing it a lot longer than he has. So her need has built up a lot more than his.
Yeah, yeah.
And, Captain America's proud of his war record. And, Black Widow's, however mysterious it may be, we know that she's not proud of it.
Right, right.
And so when the Avengers are essentially gone, as of 5 years later, they're both dealing with it in their own way, but he's arguably having a better time, not a better time, but an easier time dealing with it than she is, which is why she earns, needs to sacrifice herself to bring them back, because that is her. She is repaying the Institute of the Avengers for everything that they had given her over the years.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And I like the idea that she is running Avengers now. Like, did you get that idea too? Like, from the fact that she's running. And I wonder, right? I don't know if they'll ever explore the 5 years in between. If they have any thoughts of doing that, but like, were the Avengers still around? Were the Sokovia Accords still around? Like, I mean, obviously the Avengers was around in some capacity, including our outwardly visitors, like Rocket and Nebula were doing their thing. Captain Marvel was doing her thing. Even, I think the idea is that she came to Earth a couple of times too, right? During that 5-year period to do whatever, which could also set up Kamala Khan. How Kamala Khan could be inspired because she's seen Captain Marvel. But it's just, I just like the idea that she just had to. Number one, she lives at the facility, right? And I don't think Cap lives there because Cap was just visiting.
Right. So he lives in, property value probably went down, so anyone can get an apartment
in Brooklyn. So I mean, he doesn't say where he lives, but I could infer that she lives at the facility. but yeah, it's I just like the visual that she kind of was running this council, and she was like, if anything happens, you know who to contact, everything goes through me type scenario. Even Okoye, like, we never really got to deal with Okoye, which maybe, I mean, the movie's 3 hours, it had a lot of stuff to do, but I think if anything, there's certain things that had to go with how is Wakanda doing, how is
Yeah,
Okoye doing, like who's
like we get nothing about Wakanda, although I could see part of that being Ryan Coogler going,
yeah.
"I got it,
Oh
I
yeah,
got it,"
I
and,
got you.
and then Kevin Feige goes, "What? What? I can't. Your Oakland accent is so overpowering." And that is a callback.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you haven't seen that episode, then I just sound like an asshole.
yeah.
Or like, what are you making fun of his voice for? He's like, have you heard Ryan Coogler speak?
But yeah,
He's amazing.
yeah.
But yeah, I
I
think
think
that
they'll deal with that in Black Panther
yeah.
too.
And even if there was stuff that they shot, and I could see them going, well, we can cut this because it's not so much disappeared as it's going to be restated
Mm-hmm.
or stated for the first time in another movie.
Right.
So what can we do regarding like the core Avengers? So like those, especially those original six,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, are a large focus of this movie. So they, if they have to cut something from anybody, it will be cut from anybody else
Mm-hmm.
but them.
Yeah.
Their scenes should be the last to go
Right.
when
Um.
cutting.
Yeah. So let's jump to her sacrifice now. One thing I was saying is that when I had the idea, because I couldn't help myself with speculating on how things would go. So one of the speculations I had obviously was the time travel aspect of it, and that they would be getting the stones from the different places that they know the stones would be, right? But one of the stones that I always thought would be the most difficult would be the stone on Vormir, the Soul Stone, because of what you have to do that. So I'm like, holy shit, one of the Avengers will have to die, or someone Avengers adjacent, would have to die. Like maybe Pepper goes with Tony, and he has to hurl Pepper off the. I don't know. I don't think they'll go that dark, but something has. There's big. However way you spin it, something tragic has to happen for the Soul Stone to appear. Now, when I saw that it was Hawkeye and her going to Vormir, I was like, oh shit. Who is it gonna be? Right? And the idea that Black Widow has a movie coming out, you would think Hawkeye. But wait a minute, even though this isn't confirmed, but neither is confirmed. The Hawkeye show and the movie hasn't been confirmed by Marvel, but it's
Well, right. The Black Widow movie has not been confirmed, but it's totally been confirmed.
right. All right.
You know,
But either way you spin it, both of these characters have future projects. So what's gonna happen? Are they gonna find a way to beat the system? Is someone gonna die?
prequel, alternate timeline. Although I think that that's kind of the laziest way to do it.
Yeah.
I think a Black Widow prequel would definitely work because we want to know a little bit about the Red Ledger.
Yeah, I think that's the way they're gonna go with it. The prequel,
And making it like a framing device, being like Hawkeye telling his kids about her or something.
or it could be her falling and flashing back. When they say life flash in front of you and you die.
That sounds like a mission pack sequel to like a mission pack expansion pack to a video game.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a Hitman Contracts or something.
Right. I was thinking, right? I'm going on a tangent a little bit.
Okay.
How you could get Black Widow back in these films, even though technically she dies. I mean, it's if you mention it up front, it'll be like boo. But if you execute it properly, it'll work, right? So picture this: you're watching Black Widow movie. Some of it is set when she has her red hair between the 5 years of the snap, right? She's going on some sort of mission, and then you see it flash back to a sequence where she has where she's like going on a different mission, that it's giving an indication that mission is happening in the past, right? So it's intercut with two different Black Widows from different time periods. But then something happened that's a twist, where the Black Widow during the snapping meets up with this other Black Widow, when the twist is this Black Widow is a clone. We're going Metal Gear here, right?
Ooh.
Where you're thinking you're watching two different time periods, but then you start to see hints of, wait a second, if this is should be happening in the past, why does this match up with what's going on with this Black Widow? And then it just happens to be that it's not the past, it's the same time period. And this Black Widow happens to be a clone of this Black Widow, where they say she was like the best out of all the Red Room program, which is what they call the Black Widow program. It was in Red Room where she was training. She was the sort of solid, no, sorry, not Solid Snake. She was the Jack Snake, Naked Snake, out of the program, where she was the best. And now she's not. Now she's changed allegiances, and no other hero has ever come close to being that. So how do we rectify that situation? Well, we do have her DNA on file. Let's clone her. So you could sort of bring her clone. Her clone sort of follows her path to becoming Avenger. I mean, that could be a way to bring her back. I don't know. Maybe that'll be a cop out. Oh, you're cloning her? You're bringing clones into this thing now? Boo.
Yeah, I would be wary. I would be wary about clones.
Uh-huh.
I would be wary about a way to bring back the actor. I think we're at the stage. I remember like around Age of Ultron, people were going, "Oh well, Robert Downey Jr. is getting old. Guess we're gonna have to recast him." And it's like, well, you don't understand what a shared universe is.
Yeah.
Because if you recast him when he gets too old, then like, what's even the point of doing this?
Yeah. Right.
Like no, it's not that. It's Falcon is Captain America. War Machine is the de facto Iron Man, and that he's the only guy who has an Iron Man suit right now. I don't see Gwyneth Paltrow returning. I think that she's retired as well.
Yeah. She's a mother now. Why does she, she ain't trying to be a superhero?
Yeah, I mean, I could see her coming back. Although, now that you mentioned that, I think we could see her coming back after the next time skip, whether it's in real time or forced by the narrative. And have Lil Morgan be, put on a suit.
There's a crap ton of contenders for that suit. There's Morgan. There's the kid from Iron Man 3, which showed up at the end.
I know. I didn't recognize him, and I was like, is this like a time travel thing? Yeah. Is this like a weird kind of who's that mystery person supposed to be? And then when I looked it up, it was like, oh, it's him. That's awesome. He's so big now.
Yeah, he's all grown up, and it's the same actor. So so there's him, there's Morgan, and there's yet to be introduced, if they'll ever introduce her, Riri Williams.
Yeah, Peter Parker.
So there's so many contenders for that. What were we talking about? Oh, Black Widow. So yeah, her sacrifice. I love that scene where they're battling out. First of all, I thought the scene, right? So Red Skull appears again and says, "Oh, a soul for a soul," and then they cut to the scene where it's like, hey, how you doing? It was kind of plain, right? So I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're gonna try to work out a way to game the system.
Yeah.
Right? But then, it goes to like, yeah, I believe him because I didn't even know who my father is, which I think they'll deal with in her movie. And then it's like, so we both know what has to be done, right? Each of them thinking they'll have to make the sacrifice. And then them battling out for the sacrifice, and then right when you think Hawkeye's about to hit the floor, she grabs him, hooks him up. I just love that scene, and I like the idea that they played the same theme when Gamora bit the big one, and almost kind of mirror image if you go side by side with her on the floor and Black Widow on the floor. It's the same. And I mean, it's intentional. Could it be corny? Like, yeah, that's corny. Trying to mirror image the thing, but like,
yeah,
no.
I mean, there's a lot in this movie that could be corny. Like, but we're so invested in it and it's done so sincerely that it even if it is corny at times, it just pushes past it and is just like it goes back around again to being
Yeah.
sincere.
All right. So let me
I mean,
ask you.
like even that whole scene of them fighting each other to see who gets to kill themselves,
Yeah, it could be corny.
pretty funny. Like in a
Yeah.
darkly, it's darkly funny.
Hmm. So let me ask you this. So, are you satisfied with the way she went out? Would you have preferred it have been Clint, or you are you like the other people? Is like because I've uh, read a bunch of things and even watched a couple of stuff where they're like, oh, they hated the idea that this woman sacrificed herself for a bunch of men. It was like,
Oh my
oh my
god,
god, that's such an oversimplification of the entire
get a
thing.
girlfriend, dude.
No, I've seen women say that. That's though they hated the idea that she sacrifices herself for a bunch of men. It's like, no, she sacrificed herself to bring the world back. It's not a bunch of men,
Yeah, I mean, half of the people who got snapped were girls.
right? And then so I'm like, and then it even sets it up too, where she's in some ways she's been fighting to clean her ledger of all that red.
And that's how she does it.
And this is her moment. She's like, she finally gets that moment, and she wouldn't like. And I love that, the back and forth between, because Clint says he deserves to go too because of what he's become, and she's like, I don't judge people for what they become because what she was before, and it was Clint who saved her. Clint who says nah, because Clint was sent to kill her.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah, I think there's I kind of would love to see that story too, but whatever.
I mean, they never do any of that in the MCU, right? It's maybe just vaguely implied.
No, it said in the when she was talking to Loki in Avengers 1, she mentioned that um Clint saw the best of her, like he was sent to kill her, but he thought otherwise. She said she
I
thought
see.
otherwise. So that's the indication that he decided to spare her and bring her into the Shield family. Um so she
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as,
yeah.
he went to bat for her, so she's gonna do it for them.
Yeah, she was like, yeah, so what, you went off the deep end, like, I was pretty much where you were at the time, and you brought me in, and let me give this to you. You have a family to go back to. My family is the Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, I need to do this for my family. Uh,
She's John Krasinski in A Quiet Place.
yeah, yeah. So,
A Quiet Place spoilers.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, even though he had his reasons, but I think her reasons is good enough as well for why she was the one to go. So, what did you think of her going, or
Oh
was your
no,
preference?
I loved it. I thought, I mean, I wasn't sure if it was going to be permanent,
Mm-hmm.
and part of me still thinks that it might not be permanent.
Nah.
Although I've kind of like resigned to it being permanent, but I
Mm-hmm.
did have like a theory going on, which was before. I don't know if we ever talked about it on the show, but it was that in Avengers they were going to bring everybody back
Mm-hmm.
except for Gamora
Right.
and Loki and Heimdall and people who got killed incidentally,
Mm-hmm.
but like Gamora specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was going to be all about bringing her back.
Yeah.
Again, not knowing that it was going to be a time travel story and that they're going to have past Gamora. So I think that that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thinking about that refuted theory, I was kind of like, oh man, it would have been super cool if Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is not only just about bringing Gamora back, but about bringing back Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would be perfect because the way it was initially set up, Guardians 3 would have come out before the Black Widow movie,
Mm-hmm.
surely.
Right.
So they'd bring her back in time to be in her own movie.
Get it. Yeah.
But now, even though there's no date yet, the
Mm-hmm.
Black Widow movie is very, very likely to come out long before the Guardians of the Galaxy movie,
Yeah.
which means either my theory was just, being silly, or like they've got to, you know, assuming, and one should never assume that anything I say is correct,
Mm-hmm.
but assuming that my theory was correct, they're like, oh boy, we're in a pickle now with this Black Widow movie. What are we gonna do? I can't imagine that they would want to sit on it until after Guardians.
Right, right.
But they would make it and then just go, all right, we'll put this movie out in 3 years after Guardians. But just it would be it's kind of hasn't been done yet doing a prequel movie
Mm.
after like a prequel movie of a known character.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it'd be weird if after Avengers Endgame they made Captain America the first Avenger.
Right, right.
But that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
If Black Widow is a prequel.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's introduced as a Shield agent / Avenger, uh, and her backstory is a complete mystery. Like, unless you're like really paying attention, you don't get anything.
Right.
And even if you are, you get like the lightest of implications. It's like, oh, she did bad things.
Yeah.
We really don't know beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you watched Agent Carter, you still don't know that much.
Yeah, yeah.
Beyond it.
I like how they call back to Agent Carter too. There's a callback.
I know. I was like, oh my god, this is and I felt like that was. Wait, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
It'd be like if Captain America was introduced coming out of the ice, and we knew that he was a soldier. But even that, like, it's not as mysterious. Like he fought in World War II. He was a good guy. End story.
Yeah.
But I think that whatever happens with the Black Widow movie, it's gonna have a lot of surprises.
Yeah, I think so too. Cause I'm looking at reasons, right? I mean, there's so many things working here. There's the business side of things with Disney and Marvel. There's a creative side of things, which serves not only a single project but the universe on a whole. Because believe it or not, yes, they want to take care of each film on its own to make sure you're enjoying it. But in reality, as much as money is the bottom line for the studio, the shared universe is the bottom line for Kevin Feige.
Yeah. And they know that they have to be very careful when they're doing that, because even the admittedly mostly, not entirely, but mostly minor plot holes that do exist are just eating up the fans from the inside.
Yeah.
Like the really hardcore folks are just like, I can't reconcile this, and then their head explodes.
So then my question is, okay, so if Black Widow is a prequel, what does that serve? Unless Marvel is going in a completely different direction where the films don't really necessarily serve anything other than just being its own thing. I mean, we've had that in the previous phases where you have a movie that doesn't necessarily feel like it's serving anything, but it's called back to in some form.
In Endgame.
Yeah. But like, that's why I think there's something to it for Black Widow, right? Like, was Black Widow just a vanity project? Was like, okay, we're killing you in Endgame, but don't worry, Scarlet, we'll give you a bigger role. We're gonna give you a movie. Because in fairness, right? She started this whole thing. She's one of the first female Marvel superheroes in the MCU. She started in Iron Man. She was one of the OG Avengers, but then Captain Marvel got her first movie. It almost seems unfair. So it's like, are they trying to do right by Scarlet by saying, number one, we're killing you, but we have to do right by you, but at least giving you your own solo movie, which people have been wanting for how long?
Actually, now that I think about it, I think for so long.
You're right.
But now that I think about it, I would very easily, infer that that's why she doesn't have a funeral. Like, right. She'll have a funeral, and that funeral will be the framing device of the movie.
Right. So, like, and that's the thing, right? Because I thought the perfect time for a Black Widow movie would have been after Civil War, where she breaks off with Tony and she's pretty much on the run. That would have been a good setup for her doing a solo films because there's no Avengers around to protect her. She could be dealing with whatever is in her past during that time and having to sort of navigate the Sokovia Accords and her past at the same time. That would have been a perfect time. But now we're getting a solo movie when she's dead. So like there's a part, this is just a small part of me that is saying that, because if we were just to go by the simple fact is she's dead and her movie is just going to be a prequel, there's no way her movie could sort of reverberate with the next phase, right? It's just a one and done situation unless you introduce characters that will carry on in the next phase, right?
Yeah, like hitherto unseen shield agents.
Right? So there's just a small part of me that is saying her movie will somehow bring her character back in some form that could carry on. Again, because I'm thinking of it on 3 levels. I'm thinking of it on a business level where prequels are a hard sell already. You know what I mean? Like, why do I care about a I mean, yes, people are interested in her backstory, but at the end of the day, she dies. There's no story there.
Prequels can very easily be seen and have often been used as a cynical cash grab.
Right.
Like, yeah, you've got your X-Men First Class, which is generally adored. But then you've also got your X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is not generally adored by anybody except for me.
Right.
Love that movie. I do. Forever.
All right.
But generally, you know, when in movies, definitely, but especially in video games, you know, you do a trilogy and then you go, oh, what do we do now? A prequel with like one character who sells the most tickets and the most toys.
Yeah.
So it's a risky proposition, but I think it's one that Marvel has kind of done already. Like they've done it in certain ways, not in this way, but they've done it with Captain America and Captain Marvel, and I think that's part of another part of the reason why Captain Marvel is kind of being set up the way she is. But we haven't done it like a prequel with a deceased character after they've died and after they've been part of so many movies. Right. She's been in a lot.
That's the conundrum. That's the
right. But I think that everything that we are talking about regarding the story, setting, whatever of Black Widow is entirely speculation.
Right.
Like whatever they decide to do, even if we're lucky enough, like a broken clock, to be right 2 out of 24 times.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. Like they've earned a level of trust from us that other movie studios have not earned.
Right.
Where we'll go, all right, you're going to take us on a ride? We don't know where we're going? All right, I call shotgun.
Yeah.
You know, they the first time they proved that was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
Where they said, "Hey, we're going to do something different. It's going to be really good and really commercial, but it's not Captain America, it's not Iron Man, it's not even Thor.
Right.
It's nuts." And we all went, "Okay. You've earned that. Take us wherever you want to take us." And they took us someplace special. So whatever happens with Black Widow, even if it's set up as like a basic prequel, I still want to see. I want to see. They've earned it.
Yeah.
Go wherever they want to take me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they'll do with her film. But yeah, she went out like a G, and even though it's the bittersweet part of it is that she wasn't a part of that major scene with all female characters.
Oh yeah.
You know,
but what's really funny is that when I was watching that scene, and it's definitely my male perspective, I didn't even realize that it was like, oh, that's all the girls.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's Valkyrie, that's Rescue, that's Scarlet Witch, that's Captain Marvel. I wasn't even thinking like, that's all the girls. That's what a powerful moment.
Yeah.
I was just like, look at all these heroes. And although I can't imagine that there was a single like comic book fan girl
Mm-hmm.
who was there who wasn't like, I got you
Yeah.
regarding that scene. But me, being a dumb idiot, was just like, cool. This is a cool part of the scene. All right.
Yeah. And speaking to that too, like, I like, because one of the things that when you used to read comic books and you have so many characters in the comic books, like, oh, this character could be in this book sometimes, and all these different storylines could involve like this much character going against this much characters. And we used to think like it's cool and all we have the shared universe going on with MCU, but first time the MCU felt thin. Like, yeah, there's not much characters yet. Give them a few more years. Oh yeah, there's not many characters yet. Give them a few more years.
We're at a few more years.
Holy shit! Like,
everybody.
There's so many characters in the MCU now, and not just like one-off characters that you may or may not remember. Each of them, everybody has some sort of attachment to. It's like, we're there now, guys.
And pretty much all of them were in that scene.
Yeah,
except for Black Widow.
Do you know that Howard the Duck was in the scene?
I had heard that he was in there, but I didn't see him.
Yeah, that's I mean, I saw it 3 times, didn't see him, but somebody put a screenshot up, and I was like, holy shit, that's Howard the Duck.
That's so awesome. That's great.
And even some of the members of the Ravengers were in that scene as well.
Nice.
So yeah, like, Marvel Studios have now officially caught up to, at least I want to say 60% of the way of the comic books now in terms of how many characters they've introduced.
But that's
so far.
also like it's a thing that they can't lean on. Like they can't do that in the next Avengers.
Right.
Like they can't do that in the next in any standalone movie. Because that was so special. It was more special than like I can articulate right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the moments that I cried during the movie. When it's Cap facing down 1,000,000 soldiers.
Oh my god, I love that scene. I bet you everybody keeps saying they want that scene as a poster. It's gonna happen.
With his broken shield, but and his hammer. And everyone, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to go and fight you guys. And he tightens the shield and is just like, let's go do this. Although it's funny that he went back to that instead of the magnetic one from Age of Ultron. But whatever. Well, if it was the magnetic one, he wouldn't get that awesome strap tightening moment. And maybe he wanted to be old school for that one. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you hear, I guess it was Bucky first, his voice you hear. And then it's Sam going on your left. Or was that Sam the whole time? It was
Sam the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
When he says on your left and he shows up and a bunch of other people show up and just more and more show up. Scene. That was me going.
And cheers. And the music from Alan Silvestri, I played that track is called Portals on the soundtrack. I'm playing that track constantly. That is such a beautifully composed score, overlaid on a beautifully composed set of sequences. That is everything just mixed. It's like that scene is a representation of everything coming together in a beautiful way. From setups from 21 films before, to the love you have for each of these characters, to the soundtrack from Alan Silvestri, to the cinematography, to the special effects, to
the stakes of just being, this is what it takes to take down Thanos and his army. Oh my! It takes everyone, except for Black Widow.
Yeah. So that scene, to me, was just so amazing. And then when the music is going to Brennan, and then you hear like, that's when I said, say it, and he's like, Avengers, and then the music cuts out, assemble. I was like, yeah.
Well, the funny part about, like, you're so into it, but the funny part about that, and it happens every time anyone does a big speech on the battlefield like that, is that anyone who's like 10 feet away from him is just like, what? What was the second word? What did you say? We can't hear you back here. Like They could have cut to Korg being like, "What? I didn't hear you,
Yeah.
mate." But
Uh,
but like
that was a
that
great
that that
movie.
was for the time heist.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
could have said that during the time heist.
yeah.
Now this ending, it's just straightforward, um, completely earned.
Hmm.
It's like you knew that there was going to be a long battle
Hmm.
coming up, and I don't know how long it was. Like the whole movie did not feel like 3 hours to me.
No.
It really did race by. Um, but we've talked about the Battle of Wakanda in Infinity War
Hmm.
and how I don't need it. I
Yeah.
could have made that movie 2 hours. You cut out almost all of that.
Uh-huh.
Cut out that whole army. Have it just be the lieutenants and have it just be the Avengers that face them.
Hmm.
Uh, have it go by faster. Post Civil War, we just can't do those army scenes anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, Going from the Battle of Sokovia to the airport fight
Hmm.
in the Civil War, it's just like because you can't get bigger and better than that Sokovia battle.
Hmm.
Um, the only way that you can do it is if it's just like every single person ever,
Hmm.
except for Black Widow, fighting against an impossibly huge army led by the most powerful villain in the MCU.
Hmm.
And so anytime it was the Battle of Wakanda and Infinity War, I was kind of, eh,
Hmm.
whatever. It's fine. I get it.
Hmm.
They have to do it because then those characters have something to do in the movie.
Hmm.
But this battle, the Battle of Earth, as they're calling it now,
Yeah.
um, that was the fight.
Yeah.
That was you know, if you're the only way to go bigger and better than like the Battle of New York and the Battle of Sokovia
Hmm.
is to do that battle.
Hmm.
Um, it every single hit and every single line has so much story behind it. Whereas it never feels obligatory like it did in Infinity War for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
It feels like this is the final battle, and it is
Yep.
for a lot of these
Yep.
characters.
Um, yeah, it's amazing battle. It's fan service, but great fan service.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, the whole movie has so much fan service.
yeah,
I mean, it's a time heist going to the other movies
movie,
to
yeah,
do stuff
the
with that.
greatest. It's the greatest hits. Um, I,
Yeah,
like the only thing this movie didn't have that a traditional television show that's going through a season finale have. Like every time there's a series finale, a
a
character
montage at the very, very end.
or a character would look at their empty house or empty location is like
Yep.
lights
Then
off.
right, lights off. Look one more time, then close the door.
Yeah. So we didn't have that, but imagine that at the Avengers facility.
Yeah, after it gets blown up.
This was a this was a good home for a time. And walk off, and then maybe there's a light, one lamp that survived everything, and it's still on.
Then just like Ted Danson walks in and turns out the lights. Um, but yeah, like so it was definitely partially the greatest hits.
Yeah.
Like they went to those movies,
Mhm.
but they always added something to it. It was never for no reason.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and it didn't lean on it so much as it allowed other characters to interact with it.
yeah, and it gave us different points of view and a different take on that. Like,
And it played so well with the story of having Thanos, the villain of the movie, be Thanos from 2014.
yeah, yeah. Heck, it even made Thor: The Dark World, which is a lot of people not least favorite of it, that much more important. It's like the audience says, "Oh, you didn't like Thor: The Dark World? Boom in your face. You're gonna love it."
Yeah, and I do like that movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's got the most Rene Russo, and she is a golden goddess.
yeah,
Um, and it's one of the best scenes in the movie because it's Thor at his lowest, meeting his mom, and his mom immediately is just like, "I know who you are.
Yeah.
You're not my Thor. You're Thor from the future."
I'm totally
And
from the future.
uh, and she knows that he's in distress because she's known her son for so long that it would take a lot for him to get chubby.
Yeah.
Um, and she gives him the pep. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the first Avengers, where they go through their character arcs by interacting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was like the moment that like the shared universe really started to happen,
Mm-hmm.
where not only are they crossing over and saying hi, but they're bouncing off each other and developing their characters in a way that wouldn't be possible
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't a crossover.
Right. Right.
And this movie justifies its time travel with that scene with Rene Russo,
Mm-hmm.
of slapping her son into shape and telling him to eat more salad.
Yeah. Eat a salad. So we'll get more to Thor. Let's get to Hawkeye now. Hawkeye, who's
That
a lot of people's favorite Avenger that they want to see more of. It's like
for some reason,
they just keep wanting. Where's Hawkeye? Especially Rob. Rob Keys just loves Hawkeye.
Rob is obsessed with Hawkeye. I think it's just because he looks a little like Jeremy Renner. So
yeah. So he skipped Infinity War.
and they're telling me I'm fired from Screen Rant. So
He skipped Infinity War, but the Russo brothers promised that the next time you see him, it'll be worth it, and yeah, it was worth it.
That was a great scene. His whole family disappears in front of him. Oh, my heart.
He opens the movie, which we kind of speculated once we saw that trailer. It's like, I bet you that's the opening shot, and which it was. It was like, oh my god, he lost his entire family. So he opens the movie, and the next time you see him after that, he's Ronin. But I kind of knew this was because they made a big deal of Ronin, right? It's like, oh yeah, he's gonna be Ronin finally Ronin.
He's running for one scene.
Yeah, I said to myself like, yeah, he's gonna be Ronin, but it's just gonna be for one scene. Don't worry about it. But the reason why I'm not mad is
that was a kick-ass scene.
It's a kick-ass scene. And even if it's just for the one scene, it was like, all right, Ronin. It's not like they call him Ronin in the entire movie. It was just like, it's a cool fan service. And then the third reason why I don't think I'm mad at it is because I don't think that's the last you're ever gonna see of the repercussions of what he did as Ronin. I think it's gonna play into his series coming down later where he killed a bunch of bad guys.
Oh yeah, and now half of their buddies are now suddenly alive again.
You're right.
They're coming back for revenge.
They're gonna come back for revenge. So there's gonna be repercussions for his rampage from the Yakuza, from the cartel, whoever. And I think the idea of his show, even though it's rumors, but it's broken by a reputable site like Variety, is that it's going to play like how Matt Fractions. I have the book right down there. It's called Hawkeye, where he's in the he's basically in a neighborhood, an urban neighborhood, and he's training Kate Bishop, and he's dealing with a bunch of thugs, pretty much. So it's like a little gritty urban story. So I think they could go that route where either he has to leave his family again because they may be in danger, or he's dealing with PTSD from killing all those people. How do you come back from that, right? Can you have a normal life? Knowing that you have so much blood on your hands. Because yes, he was a SHIELD member. Yes, he was an Avenger, but I don't think he racked up that many bodies when he was in SHIELD and Avengers than he did when he was Ronin, right? Like, could he possibly adjust to normal life with his family?
There's a good contrast there with the scene in the Avengers where after he's done being brainwashed, he asks Black Widow, how many did I? And she immediately absolves him, and it's just like, that wasn't you. You were brainwashed.
Yeah.
And he kind of is just like, he's guilty, but he's like, yeah, I was brainwashed, so let's not mention it ever again.
Yeah. This time he was
But this time that was all on him.
Yeah, fully cognizant of his action. So I could see a way they could sort of bring that around for his show. That would be great. But yeah, but even, like I said, even if nothing happens further with the Ronin character, I did feel satisfied with the scene I saw. And then they brought I keep forgetting his name, the guy he eventually fights.
That ridiculously hot Yakuza guy.
Yeah. Like
Japanese John Wick.
Yeah, I laugh at the idea. I think he's in John Wick 3, I think
oh my god, really?
Yeah,
and Keanu Reeves is already like part Japanese.
Yeah.
Like a little bit.
But I laugh at the idea of them hiring that guy for that one scene. It's like, we're gonna hire you just for that one scene, because he showed up at the premiere. I watched the premiere live, and he was there, and he's like, he talked about how they approached him to hire him for a role, and I'm like, what is he playing in it? What is he? And then it just dawned on me, oh yeah, that scene where Ronan is fighting that guy. I was like, oh, is he gonna be in that scene for that short amount of time? And lo and behold, he was in that scene just for that moment.
It's really funny. I saw a lot of backlash on Twitter about that, of like people going, "Oh, they hired this super famous actor who I've never heard of because I don't follow Japanese cinema." But like, he's beloved. He's pretty beloved. I get, everyone always says he's the whoever is the Tom Cruise of wherever.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's true, I don't know if that's true.
I mean, I love him because he was in Last Samurai. That's the first time I saw him.
Oh, okay.
Then he was in this movie with Ryan Reynolds called Life. He had his own show, Helix. He was on his own show, Helix, for I think 2 seasons. So I've seen him in a lot of roles, and it was like every time I see him, it's like, oh, that guy. And he's played roles. What I like about him, he's in roles where he's not the kung fu guy or martial arts guy or samurai guy. He's done a bunch of different roles. And
actually, I remember him in Life now. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of dramatic roles, so that's why I love him as an actor. But I was like really surprised where it's like, for that one role, but hey, whatever.
Well, it's a thing where like people are getting upset because he's such a big actor and he's only got a little role and it's just a fight scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, if someone called you and said, "Hey, do you want to be in the Avengers?" It's only a small role, though. What are you gonna do? Say no?
No.
Are you gonna, like, if they called like Tom Hanks, like if you were Tom Hanks, like whatever your career is, like not saying that Tom Hanks would do this, but if you were Tom Hanks and they called you and it said, "Hey, Tom Hanks, do you want to be in the Avengers for like 5 minutes? Tops." What are you gonna do? Say no, even though you were in Forrest Gump? Like,
I mean,
okay, here's a great example.
He might say no because he's Tom Hanks, but yeah, sure.
But you also might say yes. They say, "Oh, they want me to be in this movie that is like gonna be the biggest movie of all time." Yeah. Like what if you were say, "Oh, I don't know, Robert Redford," and they said, "Hey, Robert Redford, do you want to be in the Avengers for 2 minutes?" What are you gonna do?
Shit, even Natalie Portman was in him for less than he was. She had no dialogue.
If you were Liv Tyler and they say, "Do you want to be in the Avengers and have no lines?" and just stand there at a funeral next to William Hurt.
Wait, Liv Tyler wasn't in it.
Oh, she wasn't?
No, that was Kobe Smulders.
Next to William Hurt?
Yeah.
Ah, all right. Well, sorry, Liv Tyler.
I mean, it probably was there, but I don't think Kobe Smulders was definitely there next to him.
I mean, I've only seen it the one time, but okay. So ignore Liv Tyler. She's not in it. She's never gonna be in there. But any big actor, it's called a cameo.
Yeah.
Like, even. Like, what did you want him to be, the lead? Do you want the movie to just like ignore Thanos and have like a 45-minute subplot with this one Japanese guy fighting faux Hawkeye?
Yeah.
Little faux Hawkeye. Do people call him that, or did I make that up?
You made that up. They just call him either Ronin or Hawkeye.
He's got a faux hawk.
Yeah. But yeah, his role in this movie was pretty amazing. From him being Ronin for that short time to him uh, running with the the gauntlet. Can you imagine, right? Seeing Hawkeye from the first of no from Thor,
Yeah,
that he'll eventually have a gauntlet with Infinity Stones in it and running with it, right? That's just
that's
like that's
nuts.
how far he's come. And then I love the scene too where after Hulk snaps and uh, um, he was the first indication that it worked because his phone is ringing and he's just looking at it and he's like, oh my god. And of course he's the one who tested out the quantum suits to make sure that they worked. Um,
Yep.
but yeah,
Although going back to him running with the Infinity Gauntlet, I wonder now if that was like a very like of who were they were going to get to have it. I wonder if they picked him because the first time we saw an Infinity Gauntlet was in Thor, which was where he made his debut.
yeah, yeah.
It's pretty poetic.
Some deep cuts there. But yeah, it's really really I liked his role. They did do right by him. The fact that they skipped. As a matter of fact, he was supposed to be in Winter Soldier, but they decided against it or whatever for whatever reason. He was in Civil War, but smaller role in Civil War. And then he skipped Infinity War, but then they managed to sort of bring it back around to give him a meaty role in it. Have him fight a bunch of Outriders. That scene that was totally inspired by Aliens, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With him running in the dark corridor, which is amazing.
What does he do? Shine a light, or what's the light that he uses?
He
Shoots
fired
an arrow.
He shoots an arrow that has a light at the tip of it to sort of go through them.
It's funny. I was like, what does he do? Of course he shoots an arrow. What else does he ever do?
Well,
Shoots arrows. No,
well,
I kid Hawkeye. I kid him.
he has the the batons now, and he has his samurai sword or whatever. But yeah, I love his whole arc in it, and I'm looking forward to them going further with him in the Hawkeye television show. Then let's go to Hulk. So we only got Hulk in the beginning of Infinity War, and it was all Banner. And as he stated in this movie, both Hulk and Banner lost. So they decided, you know what? We need to be pals and become one. And therefore, Professor Hulk was born. Like, when you saw that, what did you think?
Hulk. That's funny, Professor Hulk. I was like, that sounds like it sounds like the arc. That sounds like going back to the Incredible Hulk when he first thinks he has control over it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of extended in the Avengers, but he doesn't really have the control over it.
Mm-hmm.
He just is able to weaponize himself as opposed to going crazy. And between Infinity War and Ragnarok, you get that, looking back on it, you get that feeling that this is the best solution, instead of favoring one over the other. He brings them together.
Right.
It works, and he's got gigantic glasses.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm wearing.
And he makes Ant-Man tacos.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm wearing shirts now. He just says, "Oh, it's crazy, right? I'm wearing shirts now."
Yeah, too bad for Black Widow, but
if anything, I would fault not just this movie, but the movie before it of Infinity War, is that they totally just skirt over the whole relationship with him and that. It's like them saying, yeah, we kind of forced into at least acknowledging it a bit because of what Joss set up. But if it was up to us, we wouldn't have made it a big deal. And they really didn't make it a big deal. And it was like, I mean, when she died, he acted, other than Hawkeye, acted the most emotional out of the death. He's the one who says, "Where's Nat?" He was the one who threw that bench. But then he was like, we gotta do it for it. He kind of put it the back on the plot, right? It was like,
we gotta do it for Johnny.
He broke it, and he was like, all right, now let's move on with the story. But yeah, it was like that was one of the things.
And even when he snapped, he did say, he tried so hard to bring her back, but it didn't work.
Yeah, but we didn't get to see. Like, what was that? Did they have a conversation where it's like, it's not gonna work, or were they together still and you just don't know it? Because you could go either way, right? That they're still dating, it's just they didn't deal with that, or they just decided to just like, you just part as friends or whatever.
I think that she was so devastated by the snap that she just couldn't move past it and buried herself in her work and pushed him away, and so that's why he's on. Was he on the West Coast?
Was he?
Is he on the West Coast?
They didn't specify where he was.
Because like they have that scene in the diner, but now that I think about it, I don't remember where that was. I don't think it was supposed to be New York.
I mean, it could still be in New York because Scott traveled from San Francisco to New York,
Right.
obviously, because he had to meet up. And I think Downey, Tony still lives on the East Coast. I don't think he lives that far away from the Avengers facility. So I don't know. They never really make clear of the geography of all these different characters. But yeah, I loved his inclusion as Professor Hulk. Full circle, and I think he's gonna get going. We'll touch more on the future stuff, but I think we'll see him more. If I had to guess what movie you'll see him next in, only based on a scene that happens in this movie.
Doctor Strange 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he's the one. It's like I don't think it's a coincidence. He's the one who goes after the time stone. I think that's a seed.
There's some seed there.
Yeah.
Of her going, like you said about setting up the different timelines, different universes. I think that she's going to do something bad. The Ancient One. I think that she's going to not choose Doctor Strange. The way she says it.
Well,
she says, what does she say? She says, Doctor Strange was supposed to be the best of us, but maybe I made a mistake.
No. No, that's not what it meant. When she said the mistake was mine, she's talking about the fact that she was not giving the stone to Hulk. Like she refused to do it. That was the issue. Was because remember, she knows that when you watch Doctor Strange, she said she's been to a lot of futures and her future always stops at this moment. So she already knows the whole idea of once you become this sort of sorcerer supreme type character, one of the things you do is go through different timeline. So she knew that would be a temptation that Doctor Strange himself couldn't resist. So if he gave up the stone willingly, she knew for a fact that he did it for a reason. That's why she gave it up right away. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Right. And remember, her timeline has nothing to do with Thor's timeline. I mean, Hulk's timeline. So even if she doesn't decide to give that Doctor Strange the title, doesn't mean it'll affect our Doctor Strange.
Right. I know it doesn't affect the present, but I think that they at some point want to look at. I mean, we're pretty sure that the Loki series is going to be, at the very least set entirely in another timeline, but potentially, what's the point of having all these different timelines if they can't cross over?
Yeah, they'll eventually cross the streams. I mean, they crossed the stream in this movie with Captain America. Maybe him going back in the past. Whether it's a different timeline or our timeline, they do set up the fact that some effects of going into time will affect our timeline in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, he does come back one way or another.
Right.
Like, he doesn't use their time machine to get back.
Yeah.
He uses either another one or he did go to the actual past.
Right.
Their past.
Right.
Earth Zero. Earth
One.
Wait, do they not call it Earth One? Is that only a DC thing?
That's a DC thing. We do.
So what do they call it here?
The main Marvel Comics universe is called Marvel 616. This is why you see a lot of 616.
Okay.
616 Easter eggs in all the prop like the plane in Agents of Shield is
616. Yeah.
I think someone say they saw a 616 Easter egg in Endgame with the storage the unit for Scott Lang. But yeah, 616 is the main one. It's Prime. Is the Prime universe. But then the Ultimate Comics is a different one. You have different universes, and they even MCU even has its own title too. I don't remember what number it is. So the MCU, and so I'm imagining the MCU with all the other parallel universe has their own numbers. So all of that will be explored in future movies. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. But the reason why I say that Hulk will interact with Doctor Strange in some way is, yes, that scene does give you a hint that he'll be involved with the mystic arts somehow. But him being involved in Doctor Strange is the closest we'll get to the real Defenders. Because the real Defenders, not the Netflix one, the Defenders that from the comic books is Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, who they have now, Namor, and Hulk.
That's a very different team.
Yep. And sometimes Valkyrie, who we'll get to.
Is there a like a what would have been a more appropriate team name for the Defenders that we saw on Netflix?
Heroes for Hire. I don't know. They just call them the Defenders because at the time I don't think Marvel had any
plans to do
anything with that. But I think part of the reason why a lot of the Netflix shows got canceled. Yes, this Disney Plus thing was coming into play, and they're like, we're not gonna bring a competitor's program in our shit. But I think somehow they got rid of wind, or Marvel may have let them know we have plans for our characters in the future. Cut that out, because
the Marvel Netflix universe is very tangentially connected, which I think in the case of like the Punisher works to their benefit. Like, is it technically Marvel? Yes. Do they give a damn about it? No. And I'm like totally fine with that.
Yeah.
The Punisher season 2, oh my god, 10 out of 10. But that kind of brings me back. Well, we mentioned Jarvis, the driver, being the first character from a Marvel TV show, first character introduced in a show to actually appear in a movie.
Yeah.
Being such a big deal. And I did not think that it was going to happen.
Well, you know why it happened, right?
Well, because the Russos were more involved in that show than they were.
Marcus McFeely were the ones behind the
yeah,
and Kevin Feige served as a producer on that. It was the only television show Kevin Feige's name was on.
It was like the one that was closest to being a movie, partly because it used the cast.
Yeah.
From they had Haley Atwell and Dominic Cooper and the albino guy, Neil McDonough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so the whole time I was watching the movie, I was like, I'm not even gonna think about the possibility of any TV characters popping up. I'm not even gonna think about it. And then as soon as that Ronin scene came up, I was just like, man, why isn't the Punisher in this?
Yeah, that would be dope.
Like, and it would have been so natural too. Like, it would have just been like Hawkeye's partner, and they would have just been blowing away bad guys together. Like, dope. Even if you didn't know who the Punisher was, like, you'd just be like, oh, he's working with Hawkeye. Because Hawkeye's basically doing a PG-13 version of what the Punisher does. And, like, you got to imagine that if the Punisher is alive, he's making New York his stomping grounds still.
It is. I would think if they ever got a chance to do, even though this season 2 ends, like, you could end it there, I'm sure that if they were to continue, the seeds were planted that he would eventually go overseas because of that call, right? You said you watched season 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got the call saying, like, some shit is going on over here, would you take on it? And he said no, but eventually he would have went. So
Yeah, maybe. Or I think because they did that in like the Garth Ennis comics, he went overseas a couple of times.
mhm,
But to be honest, I didn't like that as much as the United States set stories.
mhm,
I think that the problem would have been that at some point, the whatever threat was overseas would make its way, which has its own allegorical, sand trap that I'm not going to get into.
yeah, right.
But but that's what the Punisher does. It takes this stuff that people don't want to get into, and
Mhm.
it gets into it, and then people go, "Oh, why does it have to get into this?" And it's like, well, because art is political, and fuck you.
Yeah.
Um, that's like the Punisher is just like, fuck you, the show. Oh my
Mhm,
god, it's so good.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, during all of that Ronin stuff, I was just like, just have him show up.
Yeah.
Just have Ronin, like a guy sneak up on him and then get his head blown off, and then just Frank Castle going. "Ugh."
uh,
But I knew it was never gonna happen, but I couldn't. Once I thought it, I couldn't get it out of my head.
mhm. But then I'm sure when you saw that Jarvis, like, oh, but it's funny. It works on so many levels, right? It works for us people who watch all the stuff, like, holy shit, Jarvis. But for the people, because I noticed that too, a lot of people who weren't even familiar that he was in the
Yeah.
show.
Who
It was
never
like,
even watched Agent Carter, but you still make that connection because it's
because yeah,
Jarvis.
and he sounded like Jarvis, so it's like, oh, so that's where Jarvis came from. So it works on so many levels. Is why I think they put him in there, and he wouldn't be as jarring as the other characters, because then it'll just be like, yeah, for us show watchers, we love it, but if you're not a show watchers, it's an added thing to Tony Stark's arc and how he created Jarvis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, so yeah, Hulk, I loved his role. I don't see, he is one of the Avengers that still has lots more to do down the line, and I think, again, I may be wrong, but I think the Defenders is another thing that they'll end up doing with him, Doctor Strange, and he'll show up in Doctor Strange too. I have a feeling he's gonna show up in Doctor Strange too, because I was trying to,
See Hulk using magic, that'd be sweet.
I made a list of movies that are could be in, because sometimes I'm bored, and I love to think about these things. I made my own list,
Oh yeah.
which I'll tell you. I'll go over once we get to there. But yeah, I think he'll definitely show up in Doctor Strange. If not Doctor Strange, a Defenders movie, or the real Defenders.
Yeah, I think just for clarity, they should just give it a different team name.
Well, actually, I changed the title of it. I was calling it Defenders, but I changed the title of it. When I go over the list, I'll tell you the title I changed it to.
Okay,
Anyway.
okay.
All right, so then we move on to Thor, another character that not just this movie, but throughout the entire MCU have had one of the greatest arcs as well. Like, being this cocky dude from the first Thor who had to learn a little bit of humility, but still, he was still cocky. And he knows it. I love that every film that he's in, well, at least the Avengers films that he's in, there manages to be at least one character that's enamored with him. In Ultron,
He's the hottest Avenger.
yeah, in Ultron, it's like, I don't have time for your parties, Mrs. Stark. Will Thor be there?
Kind of sad she didn't pop up in Endgame that I noticed.
Yeah,
Doctor, whatever her name is. Helen Cho.
Helen Cho, which is the mother of Amadeus Cho, who is a Hulk secondary character in Hulk. But yeah, so he went on such a journey, and then having the failures of what happened with not going for the head that first time took a toll on him, and he became chubby Thor. It was like,
not just chubby, but like alcoholic.
yeah, basically Big Lebowski.
Yeah, Tony even calls him Lebowski at one point.
And I love that. I kind of,
Which doesn't make sense because Jeff Bridges was the Lebowski,
Yeah.
and he was Obadiah, and like,
dude, that's not the only thing. They mentioned Hot Tub Time Machine. Do you know who was in Hot Tub Time Machine?
Chris Hemsworth.
No, Sebastian Stan, Bucky.
What? Too much. The time paradox. These movies are ruined for me.
So yeah, we got Fat Thor, And what was great is that when he got the hammer and the thing,
I love that he's still
he
fat.
was still fat with the. And
Uh-huh.
I think, and I'm not sure, but I think when Guardians Volume 3 comes out, it's still gonna be Fat Thor. I have a feeling because it plays more. I mean,
Yeah, I think that Guardians 3 will also be set very, very shortly after
yeah, yeah.
uh Endgame, just because they want that dynamic of 2014 Gamora.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's gonna be important. It's so funny. I remember after Infinity War, or maybe right before Infinity War came out,
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn said that that Guardians 3 was a Gamora centric
Mm-hmm.
story.
Mm-hmm.
So then, of course,
When she died, yeah, when she died, I was
yeah,
like, did he lie to us?
yeah, but like when she died, everyone was like, oh well, he said it's going to be a Gamora centric story, so of course she's coming back
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the next game. It's all going to be undone. I know everything
Mm-hmm.
because my head is up my own ass.
So you know what what I love about this, right? So
Like
James,
he was playing,
right?
with us.
So James Gunn was a he got executive producer credit on both of these movies, right? Endgame and Infinity War, and he was basically writing the script before Infinity War um, came out. He helped write the script for Infinity War and maybe Endgame too, because they said that a lot of the Guardian stuff he was the one who kind of doctored the script for that, right? I want to be in that. It is more. It's like 100% likely that he knew he was getting Thor for his movie. Now, was it a thing where he asked for Thor? Is like, yo, can I get Thor? Or was that a conversation where everyone in the room are like, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, and then, oh wait, can I have Thor? I would do some crazy stuff with Thor. So Thor ends up being in his movie. Like, I know that he's gonna have so much toys to play with Guardians Volume 3. That is just like that movie is one of the most anticipated movie for me
Oh yeah,
for the future, because you saw a glimpse of how Thor interacts with the Guardians,
yeah. I am the leader.
right? Even from Infinity
Yeah,
War, he was like
he
very
speaks Groot.
yeah, he speaks Groot. He was very dismissive of Quill. He loved the rabbit, right?
But Batista Drax admires him,
Yeah,
or at least did.
the God Man.
We'll see. We'll see how he feels about Fat Thor.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's still strong,
Yeah.
so he's
So
still got the strength of a god.
that cast, man, and it's brave. I love Marvel for this, right? Because it'll be easy for them to say, "Yo, Thor Ragnarok did so well. Let's do another Thor movie." What are you doing? No, they're putting Thor in a Guardians movie. Like,
It's both. Like that's why it's the MCU. Like
I love it.
it's like people kept on going, "Oh man, we're never gonna get an Iron Man 4. I'm so mad we're never gonna get an Iron Man 4." What do you want? You got Age of Ultron, you got Civil War, you got Spider-Man: Homecoming,
Mm-hmm.
and you're complaining about Iron Man 4?
Yeah.
We're past that.
Shit. All these people are talking about that it'll never be the same again because the main guys that we love are just not gonna be a part of it. Captain America and Robert Downey. Trust me, because I'm very optimistic, but I'm basing my optimism on a little bit of education here in the world of not only the comics but just the potential of these characters that they've already introduced in the movies, plus characters that they'll be introducing in the future. Give it 5 years, man. You probably won't even. I mean, you'll still miss them, but you won't be thinking, "Oh man, we need RDJ for this movie." Like, there's so much potential for these characters. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be so great to finally see War Machine get his due. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that he's played by Don Cheadle,
Mm-hmm.
like like if War Machine was still played by Terrence Howard,
Mm-hmm.
he would be like the most stereotypical black best friend ever. Like it would be like there would be think pieces on how problematic it is because it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it wasn't for the fact that Don Cheadle is like the kind of guy who can go toe to toe with Robert Downey Jr. and win,
Yeah.
uh, like he would just be the most insufferable. Like he could be, he would be Chris Tucker in Rush Hour.
Right.
But like that's why I'm so glad about the dynamic between Cap and Falcon.
Yeah.
That it's different from that. Um, and they don't feel he doesn't feel like even though he is,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't feel like the black best friend,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
which is such a easy trap to fall
yeah.
into.
Yeah. Which I'll talk about Falcon too, man, because there's some cool stuff coming down the line for him.
Yeah.
But then, so Thor, I like his journey. I liked his whole sequences in this movie. How he got the hammer too, because the one of the things that when his hammer was broken in Ragnarok, we were like, oh, so that means we're not gonna get a scene with Cap lifting the hammer.
Yep.
They
I remember.
found a way to bring it back, and it's like, holy shit! But then even before he got lifted the hammer and axe Thor was still a badass, right? I just love that scene where he's just standing there watching Thanos sit down. The rest join him, and then he's saying, "So it's we're just gonna go kill him, right?" And he's like, "Yep, you're gonna do it." Just so we're all on the same page, and you just see his eyes just start glowing, and then the crack of the clouds, and then it just grabs the two weapons, and I was like, yeah, man, now we're ready for some war.
It's so earned. Like it's not just and here's a 40-minute fight scene.
Yeah.
That like even the best of these movies can sometimes fall into that unless you're an action fan who's a fan of, of the movies. Sometimes you can be like, all right, the action is a little, you could do some cuts here.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was all like every second was a gift.
Yeah.
And I wonder now if they cut some jokes. I wonder if they cut some jokes because it does feel when it's not overtly comedic, like there are a lot fewer, one-liners during the battles. Like I think, like compared to like the Battle of Wakanda, which was, I liked the one-liners better than the fighting. I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers. This one, it was deadly serious, even though there were plenty of jokes thrown throughout. Like when Cap gets his hands on Stormbreaker, and Thor has to macho his way. He's like, "Oh no, you get the little one." So good.
Yeah.
And Thor. So is Guardians of the Galaxy 3 going to be called Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or as Guardians of the Galaxy?
Nah. It's tempting to call it because there's the comic book that's called As Guardians of the Galaxy, so it is tempting. But I think they're just gonna go with the Volume 3 motif, considering it. Yeah, Volume 1 and 2, Volume 3. And I
give it a still like As Guardians of the Galaxy, aka Volume 3.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I love the fact that we'll
wait.
Go ahead.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 As Guardian Remix.
Oh. That could work.
Thank you.
But yeah, so out of the original 6 so far, we have Hulk that definitely has more to do. We got Thor that definitely has more to do. Hawkeye and Black Widow, whatever their thing comes out. So now we come to the Avengers that seemingly are the ones that get their send off, right? Like we may or may not ever see them again, but they're making it clear that we probably won't see them again, but we may. but probably not.
I would like to see an old man Cap.
Right. Well,
Like Falcon coming to him for advice,
right.
or not Falcon, Captain America coming to him for advice.
Yeah, because he is still alive, right? He's still alive.
Yeah, he's
Um,
very very old, but he's
and
alive.
and it has happened in the comics as right around the time when Falcon became Captain America. There was Old Man Steve in the comics, and he was wait for it, director of Shield.
Nice.
So could they bring back Shield and he's the director of it or whatever, and then have Falcon do his thing, whatever. But anyway, another great arc for Steve. Starting way back from the first Avengers. I if there was a film line, and I say this all the time, that if you just wanted to watch 7 films out of the MCU, you watch the 3 Captain America movies and the 4 Avengers movies, and that you watching those films will give you an overarching feel of the entire MCU in the face, like, because his journey from he has, I think, probably the most callbacks, maybe, like it ends with him with the dance that he finally gets with Peggy Carter. The scene where he's in the elevator is a callback to the Winter Soldier, which was, I love that scene, by the way. You know, Hail Hydra. um, what else? I mean, yes, it was in Avengers 2012, but he was a part of that. When he went back into the 70s, seeing Peggy there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, both he and Tony experienced the same sort of
I mean, they're
moment.
definitely the two leads
Yeah.
together. Because Iron Man was there 1st, but Cap was, it was the underdog.
Yeah.
His movie was the underdog movie back in 2011.
And his Cap's stories, all 3 of his films serviced the entire MCU a lot more than Tony's did. With the Tesseract being the Tesseract showed up in damn near all the movies. Tesseract was in Captain Marvel, Captain America, Avengers. It was in Infinity, Endgame. It was everywhere.
That blinker, you'll miss it in Iron Man 2.
The Tesseract?
Yeah, it's in his dad's notebook.
Oh.
It doesn't look exactly the same.
Oh.
But it's a cube. Like when he's flipping through the pages in his dad's notebook,
it was like a diagram-ish look.
It's a diagram of it, and it's like a square, but the way it's drawn, it kind of suggests that there's something inside it.
Oh, got it.
It's like it whether it's deliberate or not, kind of foreshadowing that there is actually a stone inside it.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. So yeah, Cap. From the time he got the shield, like he had one of the best moments in Endgame, getting the hammer. Like, I just love that scene that you saw the hammer just lifting up. You could play off like it's Thor trying to bring the hammer to him, and it hits Thanos and it goes back, and then he gets it. Like, oh my god, man.
I knew it.
And then not only does he have the hammer, but he has the hammer towards the end. Now, granted, it could be that he is going to return the hammer as well as the stones, which is probably more likely.
Yeah, he's got to give it back to Thor.
Yeah, so, but here's the thing. As good as the overall ending is, him going back in time, him skipping the time stuff and then ending up, that is a story, That is a story. I would love to see that that Captain America Infinity Quest story. Number 1, he's going to Vormir to meet Red Skull.
They're gonna hang out. They're gonna be like, "Hey,
now
Nazis lost, buddy."
Now they haven't said anything about this, right? Where they mentioned the Soul Stone. It's a soul for a soul. You have to give up a soul to get the Soul Stone. But have they ever said what would happen if you give back the stone? Could that be a way to bring Black Widow back?
Could be.
Like, here, because he's bringing the stones back. He's putting and each of the stones presents its own challenges to bring back, right? He has to put the Mind Stone back in the scepter. Like, how is he gonna do that? How is he gonna put it back to where it's supposed to be without being caught? How is he gonna put the Tesseract back into the base without being caught? That could be a way for him to meet Peggy and probably go on a small adventure with Peggy in that timeline. I don't know, who cares? But he's got to go to Morag to put the stone back. He's probably gonna interact with Quill and Korath the Pursuer. That's Jaimin Hansu's character. There's a story to be had in his quest to put these stones back. And I'm wondering if Kevin Feige isn't thinking about that, right?
I bet that they'll get around to telling it one day, one way or another.
Right, but yeah, that was just my thinking after coming out of this movie, where it was like, wow, there's a lot of story you can mine out of that one mission.
Right.
But,
It just the hard thing is like it sounds like you can make a movie out of this story that we know,
mm-hmm.
but we already know how it begins and ends.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
more like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you make it exciting and kind of, even if it's a lot of it just winds up being like a domestic story about Cap and Peggy together.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's a story that we want to see,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not sure how it can be told to make it, more than just, ooh, we want to see it.
Yeah. When I was thinking about too, right? I was thinking, because Falcon did say to him, "Oh, or he indicated that once he did his mission, he decided to give this life that Tony's always talking about a shot." But what if the first place he went was to her house before he did the stones, and decided, hey, you want to come with me and go on this journey together?
That'd be great.
Speaking of which, because I know you only seen it once, I don't know if you had time to notice it, but I noticed this on my third viewing. That scene where the camera is pushing up to the house, the door is open. I think that's an indication that he just showed up to her, because when she's dancing, she's crying. So that doesn't feel like we're dancing for the third time, fourth time, and we've been living together for a while. That looks like the door being open, the fact that she's crying says to me that's when he just shows up at her door. Mm-hmm. And this could be, if I had to make a guess, this is like either right after he supposedly went in the ice, or some time has passed since he went into the ice, and she's shocked that he's alive, and yeah, I would
gave myself feelings.
I would love to
just thinking about that scene again.
Yeah, it was a great scene. It was a great send off to the character. So yeah, even if we don't see Chris Evans again or Captain America, I think it's a worthy send off to it. I mean, I'll put it around 30% that we'll see Chris Evans again in the future,
like one way or another.
Yeah, one way or another. Either it being a Infinity Quest movie, or a prequel that's set in around his timeline, or just some way they'll manage to bring him back.
You know what? I could see them doing something like that as like a movie, but like on Disney Plus.
Probably. Yeah.
But I could definitely see Old Man Cap, Old Man Steve popping up in like a small role in a future Captain America movie where Falcon is just like, dude, I need some help, man. And he's like, what's the matter? And he's like, I don't know, I'm fighting Khan. And he's like, well, Khan Noonien Singh was the worst enemy that guy's ever fought. And, well, how did you beat him? And he's like, well, at great cost. But like, obviously, not exactly that. Yeah. But I like, that's a role that I think that he could play.
Or the easiest way, which could be a red flag, but it's easier than all the others, is kind of like what they did in the comics too. When he was old, he got the super serum back, and he became young, strong Steve again. So they could do that where he became, somehow something causes him to become young, strong Steve again.
That would be don't think that they would want to do that. Like Endgame proved that they're, the again, the cynical people who go, "Oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. They're just going to hit the reset button."
Mm-hmm.
And Endgame showed that they're not going to do what comics do a little bit too often, from my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
which is hit that reset button and pretend like nothing ever happened. I'll make a deal with the devil and save my dead aunt. Boom.
Yeah.
Uh, and other examples.
Yeah.
Like even the original Snap, didn't they like reverse it in like a day?
Yeah. Not even a day. It's 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah,
it's kind
it's
of
in a
like,
day. Yeah, yeah, it's around
so
a
it's
day.
like, if he wipes out half the universe, does he really wipe out half the universe if no one notices?
Mm-hmm.
And this says, no, we don't hit the reset button. We move forward, whatever happens.
Yeah, and speaking of that too, because I was having a conversation with my cousin. She was like, uh, yeah, but at the end they're gonna bring everyone back, right? So it's like, what's the stakes, right? And I was thinking about it too. It's like, so what could they possibly do in this movie that would honor what happened in Infinity War, but still bring back all these potential billion-dollar franchises, right? Like, how do you do that? And one of the things I thought to myself is like, when the idea of a time jump first floated around, like, because there were rumors that this movie would have a time jump. The only thing is, I didn't know that the movie would start right where it left off and then do a time jump. I always thought like the movie was actually gonna start with a time jump, like years later. And my idea was that the stakes would be in that, yes, everyone came back, but they came back to a time that's passed them by for like how many X amount of years has passed. They're coming back to that timeline. So people who they might have known, loved ones they might have known, probably are older or probably moved on, got married or died or whatever. That's the stakes to me. Like, yes, they're back, but they're back into a world. And I think what Kevin Feige said about Spider-Man: Far From Home being taking place minutes after Avengers 4, because he didn't reveal the title then. He says it movie takes place after the Avengers 4, and it will be our first glimpse into a new world after Avengers 4. He will be the character that will guide us into this new world. So we were wrapping our heads around like, what does that mean? Like, what kind of new world is it like a new reality? Did the reality stone change reality or something like that? But the new world, so that's when I came in my head, like, maybe the new world he's talking about is that they've come back into a time that's passed them by 5 years, which is exactly what happened. Which even if I kind of predicted in my head, it was still like shocking and amazing that they did that. And that was like a logical way to do it without negating what came before. Like, oh yeah, they snapped half the universe, but then what's the stake if they bring everyone back? The stake is they're in a different. It's like a time. Our world right now without superheroes. Next year is a completely different world we're in. Like, right now is a different world than last year was, and that's just a year. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then next year will be a different time, especially election. We're gonna have a new president and all that stuff. So I can imagine 5 years. You're skipping 5 years. So yeah, I'm enjoying that fact of it, and I'm glad that we're gonna get a post Marvel that's 5 years ahead of ours, and
Yeah.
that it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome.
The it will be, but I wonder if there's going to be any. I wonder if they wanted to be so secretive about what happens in Endgame that they let that impact what happens in Far From Home.
Hmm.
Like, are any of Peter's classmates going to have not been snapped?
Unless some of those sequences you saw in the trailer, because you saw the trailer, right?
Yeah.
For Spider.
Mhm.
What if some of those trailers are doctored, kind of like the whole Ant-Man, the Iron Man and
Yeah.
Spider-Man swinging? What if in some of those scenes, yes, they have some of those kids in those scenes, but they're older and they're teachers' assistants and not actual students. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One character I can see coming back into it to indicate that things have changed is the Liz character, because the Liz character, as a matter of fact, the actor who plays Liz is way older than Tom Holland.
Huh.
All right, because she was in that movie Black Klansman. She was in Black
Yeah.
Klansman as a love interest,
Yep.
and she looks older than her character in Spider Man. So they could bring her character, the
And
actress
just
back.
she's someone who they could dress up like without.
Yeah,
Yeah, they could make her look older with very little effort.
right. And then could be like, holy shit, Liz, you're older. You know what I mean? That could be like an indication if they don't want to have the other kids older, but she could be like a factor that we're familiar with to carry over to this movie to give us an indication of how different it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, basically, I mean, they've done a really good job of keeping the production like under wraps.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if it was a thing where like the movie is so, it's not the Avengers, but it's still so high profile,
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man Far From Home, that if like set photos got out of having like an actor who's clearly supposed to be playing someone, a student,
Mm-hmm.
but they're an older version of them.
Yeah.
Like if, any like passerby or paparazzi may or may not be able to put two and two together
Right.
and be like, oh, I think I know what happens in Endgame. It's one of those. I wonder if it won't be maybe until like the movies after that
Mm-hmm.
that we'll start to see. I hope that's not the case. I don't mean to be negative. I'm so hyped for Spider-Man Far From Home
Oh my god.
because of how much I loved Homecoming
Mm-hmm.
and how much I love that we don't know that much about the story.
Yeah.
Like they're on a field trip and Jake Gyllenhaal and like monsters made out of water. But we also know that Michael Keaton's going to be there too.
Yeah.
So like I'm in it because I think Michael Keaton's going to be like the new lead. He's going to be the new Loki.
Probably. Ah, no,
Like
I don't think so.
Where
But-
he was a villain and
Yeah.
he's gonna be an Avenger. Just wait. He's gonna be an Avenger.
So do you know how so this movie doesn't have a post credit scene. How I look at Far From Home, I look at Far From Home as the post credit scene. Post credit scene for for the MCU.
Entire MCU. Yeah. That's why I mean I thought about what you said at the one of the other podcasts, how the first movie after the Avengers is like a postscript to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like how Ant-Man is technically the end of Phase 2,
Mm-hmm.
and now Spider-Man Far From Home is technically the end of Phase 3, and how it's very easy to just grandfather in Iron Man 3 as the end of Phase 1.
Yeah.
And that, I think that works so well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Far From Home will definitely be. It'll set up some stuff. I mean, all of these movies set up something.
Yeah, I mean the fact that you have Fury and Maria Hill in there, I think maybe they're setting up the rebirth of Shield or something. Like what are their characters doing there? Like why are they there? Why does Pete have to handle this big thing? There are other heroes around, for crying out loud. What is it so specific about Spider-Man? All that stuff is like one of the questions we're having. But hey,
yeah, and we're gonna find out real soon.
Yeah,
2 months.
A couple of months. And then the final hero we want to talk about is Iron Man, the guy who started it all, whose ending lines in Iron Man was "I'm Iron Man," and whose ending line as a corporeal form in Endgame was "I'm Iron Man." It was a
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was great. It was a great ending to his entire arc. He finally made the sacrifice play that Steve said accused him of not making. He was the one thing in the film that prevented the idea of a complete reboot. If it wasn't for him, then they could have all of the Avengers could have easily said, "Let's go back to a time without before the snap and just reboot everything." But the fact that he's the only one out of most of the event. Well, Cap, he's always a positive guy, so he handled it a lot better. But out of all the Avengers, he manages. He was lucky. He said it in the movie. He was lucky. He was one of the lucky ones. Pepper was
Yeah.
still around. He managed to have a kid out of all that depression and desperation. He had a family. He found this retirement and this beautiful thing, diamond, out of this roughness that was the snap, right? Out of the dust, coming all the collective dust, crushed into a diamond, which was Morgan Stark. So if she didn't exist, because the whole idea was that he was hesitant to do anything for fear of changing that outcome. But then the fact that she exists is like, all right, we'll bring everyone back to this world, but we're bringing it back on my terms. I don't want to lose Morgan. I don't want to lose Pepper. But at the same time, I want Peter back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
But it's also a thing. I think they kind of go through it both ways. Where isn't there even a line they said like even if we wanted to, we wouldn't actually be able to change. Because they say like we can't change the present.
mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was really an option to send
Well,
them back before that.
yeah. I don't.
So like he says he wants it to be this way,
Uh-huh.
but the story itself also says, well, even if we didn't want it to be this way, this is the only option we have.
Well, I think what he really meant, not necessarily that they'll change time by go back in time. I think what he was worried more so about is the power that the Gauntlet have. Will that be will bringing everyone back? Like it's kind of like that genie in the bottle situation, right? Where you wish for something, but you try to be as specific as possible, but wishing for something means that something doesn't happen because of your wording,
Right.
So I think it was just more along the fear of like, okay, bringing everyone back, there might be some sort of sacrifice, because he even said it too when Hulk finally has the gauntlet. It says, make sure you bring everyone back, don't change anything else, because it obviously it's a mental situation. Snapping the finger doesn't just bring everyone back, is snapping the finger with the thought of what you want the snap to do. You want the snap to bring everyone back that died 5 years ago, boom, bringing them back. But there's just certain things that the snap won't do. You could, like, for instance, I think what he feared was Bruce saying, bring everything back how it was before the first snap.
Right.
And that would just destroy reality, and it would just bring everything back before the snap, right? So him saying specifically, bring everyone back, but to here is the specificity that he had to have in his head, as not to get rid of Morgan and Pepper and everything else that has happened with the 5-year jump.
Yeah.
I think that's more in the lines of what he was thinking about. Versus if he didn't have Morgan, he probably would have said something along the lines of, yes, let's bring everything back to the way it was 5 years ago. And that would have just destroyed reality. But he wouldn't have lost anything because he wouldn't have had Morgan anyway. So he just doesn't. So I think that was the key to having the 5 years still remain a thing. Morgan was that key. She was that one factor. So yeah, I just loved his journey, his ending. Will we see him again? The potential of him uploading himself to an AI is there, because you saw a little bit of it with the recording. So he could be a Jarvis type character to whoever becomes Iron Man next, whether it's the kid from Iron Man 3, whether it's Riri Williams, whether it's Morgan Stark. The only problem with Morgan Stark is you'll have to make more time jumps for her to be old enough to.
Yeah, but it's a thing where have it be whoever it's gonna be, just wait for her to grow up.
Right.
It's like they waited for Ty Simpkins to grow up and didn't even recognize him.
Yeah. So yeah, there's time, especially with the stuff that is rumored, plus the stuff that I have in my head that they could do, because Feige said he has a 5-year plan. So I tried to predict his 5-year plan. We'll find out sometime in July, or a couple of months later in D23. So either in July at Comic-Con or D23 in August, we'll find out what the next phase will look like. But I put together a list, which I'll get to in a few minutes because we're about to wrap up everything. So Iron Man gets his beautiful send off. Robert Downey Jr., which was such a impactful part in the 3 phases, we'll definitely miss him. But there's he may show up, may or may not show up in the future as in some capacity, kind of like Steve. But if they don't, we still have a bright MCU future ahead of us. But yeah, what did you think of his send off?
I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I think, oh man, it started with him in a cave with a box of scraps.
Yeah.
In a cave. But and I think that post credits scene was supposed to be like it sounded like him, hitting an anvil or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's supposed to recall back to that, but also saying,
we're rebuilding.
Even when things end, new legends.
Yeah. So
begin.
yeah, I think it was serving 2 of those roles. It's like, this is where we began, but we're rebuilding again. Don't worry. The MCU is still a thing.
And there will be, new heroes are gonna rise up and be like, "Hey, man, Iron Man, I'm Iron Man now."
Yeah.
Don Cheadle's gonna be like, "Hey, now I get my own movie."
As long the thing
Suck
is,
it, Ike.
the MCU can last for a very long time if they manage not to repeat. As long as it's not a repeat of any other films in the phase. I mean, you could play homage, you could emulate in some aspects, but these movies going forward, which they have the potential to do, have to be drastically different in order for that dreaded or much talked about comic book fatigue to sink in, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, Sam Wilson is going to be a very different Captain America. He's got, but he's still going to have Bucky.
Yeah.
And there's going to be this, like the show on Disney Plus. I don't think it's going to be called Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think it's going to be called Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
I had that on my list, right? Because I put a couple of the TV shows that are happening that were announced in my list, and that's one of the things that I think is going to change. Because yes, when they talked about it on their investment thing, whatever, where they talked about the Disney Plus and they showed the logo Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This is before Endgame came out. Obviously, they didn't want to call it Captain America and the Winter Soldier to give away anything. So I think Kevin Feige is gonna do this thing, like the same thing he did with Captain America: Serpent Society.
Right. Yeah.
He's gonna say, that doesn't look accurate, does it? And then changes Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Same with Scarlet Witch and Vision. Vision didn't come back.
Yeah.
He's still super dead.
But I think he'll come back to some capacity. Either what Shuri did in Infinity War was able to save some stuff before she,
I think there's something there, yeah.
Or it could play into, because you see how, which I love, we didn't get to talk about that because she's not on the list, but when she came down and fight Thanos, she's the only character that was about to kill him. He had to rain fire down in order not to die. Even Captain Marvel couldn't beat him, which I'm so happy is acknowledged, because for us comic book fans, some of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel universe, most of them are mutants. She is included in one of them. Legion is another, and the Phoenix is another. Those are 3 of the most powerful entities in the Marvel universe. And I think this is a foreshadowing, her coming down and just raining terror on Thanos. As a matter of fact, even in Infinity War, she was holding him back while trying to destroy the Thing. The only reason why she got beaten, I guess when she was saying no, and he smacks her away because she was unaware that he would bring Vision back. So one of the things I say is a foreshadowing is that either the whole Vision thing with Shuri comes into play, or she brings back Vision through her reality powers that she has, which would be a setup for House of M down the line, where she has two kids, and those two kids leading into Young Avengers, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that are coming down the line that with Captain America and the Winter Soldier, which has Bucky in it. And then so wrapping off Iron Man, it was great wrap off, great send off, loved it, thumbs up. So real quick, if you ranking Endgame, where would you rank it if you can?
Very high, very high. Much higher than Infinity War. Although I know Infinity War is a lot of people's number ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the middle for me. But Endgame, I've only seen it the one time.
Mm-hmm.
On Sunday, I was thinking like, wow, this is one of the best movies I've seen, period.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, I have not really changed on it.
Right.
I still like it just so much. I mean, it's hard to say like it's number one, so watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like watch it if you're invested. It's one of those movies. It's like the last Harry Potter movie or something where
Mm-hmm.
like if you're not in, you'll probably still have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's not made for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's made for people who've been watching these movies whenever they started watching them. It doesn't matter, but like who've watched a bunch of them and who love them.
Yeah.
And it's that perfect mix of storytelling and fan service that is like we're going to show our appreciation to the fans,
Mm-hmm.
but we're also going to take them to places that they didn't know they were going to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's the best way to do it, is to say thank you for watching, and here's a new twist, because that's why you watch for the twist, not to see the things that you saw in the trailer.
Yeah. So yeah, I look at it a few ways, right? So Infinity War and Endgame, even though they're tonally two separate movies, and I still stand by the idea that Infinity War is its own movie and this isn't its own movie. But you can, if you wanted to, unlike the other standalone movies in the MCU, you can, if you wanted to, put these two together. These are very much companion pieces, right? One can't exist without the other. Because if you only go by Infinity War, the movie ends, everyone's dead. There's no resolution to that, right? Other than Thanos won. If you only watch Infinity War, only watch Endgame, you miss the whole lead up to that desperation that these people have to go through. So they're companion pieces that depend on each other. So I could easily rank them and say, hey, together on a whole, to me, is number one, right? I won't do that. What I would, however, do is I did describe something that happened in the past before Infinity War came out, where I saw Civil War as the best movie, but my favorite was Guardians for a long time. Until Infinity War came out, then my favorite and the best they synced up, right?
Yeah.
Now I have to, if I had to choose between the two, Endgame and Infinity War, my favorite is Infinity War, but the best experience and the best overall crafted film was Endgame. Because I can rewatch Infinity War over and over and over. I would say the weakness of Endgame is even though that first hour is needed to show just how low our heroes have gotten, it is to some extent not the rewatchable part of it. The rewatchable part is the second half of the movie, more specifically the last hour, right? It's like if you want to watch Endgame again, you have to go in knowing you have to sit through the first hour before.
It didn't feel like 3 hours, so I don't know how it lines up. But is it like an hour of everybody being sad, an hour of Time Heist, and an hour of upstate New York?
I think about 40 minutes in, that's when Ant-Man comes in. And then
Yeah, and like the
yeah,
first 15, 20 minutes are the is the prologue.
yeah.
So like the everyone being sad is not as long as
It's not necessarily the
I don't
sadness
think it
part,
is.
but if you know, because I listen to the score a lot too, right? And the score informs you how to feel certain times, not just the what's happening on the screen. The score actually informs you how helps informs you how to feel at that moment. And there's a lot of Alan Silvestri's score that's more somber, even in the beginning of that movie, especially after you hear "Dear Mr. Fantasy," when he's doing the whole "Dear Peggy" spiel, the way how the score is being portrayed. Then it goes into the title card. Even the title card didn't feel as strong as the previous title card, but it did have that rousing moment. But then when they fly to New Titan or wherever Thanos is, it's somber again, somber for that whole part. And then they replay that track that Thanos when he first sits down at the end of Infinity War. They replay that, but more of a like yeah, it's done, over with, fade to black 5 years later, and then from there it's a lot of somber stuff going on, right? Until Ant-Man shows up. So yeah, for a good chunk of it, yeah, you have to deal with that, and then even when they come up with the plan, it's not as yeah, we're ready. They still have to jump through a few hurdles. The whole thing of, oh, can time travel work? Oh, Banner trying out time travel, it not working until Tony shows up at the facility. Then that's when, like, all right, things are starting to work. Things are lighter now. Things are more fun. But yes, it's a good while before you get to the fun stuff. So yeah, so that's why. But Infinity War, from the frame one to the last frame, is like a roller coaster ride because it was designed that way, and that's why I think you can actually watch that more if you don't watch them back to back. The first half of that situation with Infinity War being the first half of the whole is more rewatchable than the second half. Yeah, but anything that third act alone blows any other movie out the water. So that's why it's a toss up, right? All right, so that's my ranking. It number one, Endgame. I still give Endgame number one, with a caveat of you can throw in Infinity War as one movie and make it the ultimate number one. But if I had to choose which was my favorite, I would choose Infinity War. All right, so to wrap it off now, the next phase, discuss it real quick. I'll just read down my list. What my little fake list, if I had to be a betting man, but it's
All right,
probably
bounce them off me.
so. I have 2020. This is what I have coming for 2020, and it's only because of the casting that's going on right now. Because Black Widow, they casted a lot of people already. Dave Harbour from the new Hellboy, which I heard sucks. I'm not gonna watch it until that comes out on video. He's in it. I forgot her name, but she played in Fighting with My Family, the main
Okay, yeah.
character. She's casting it. Rachel Weisz is casting it. So Black Widow has a lot of shit going on right now. So 2020, I have Black Widow. I have the Eternals because again, a lot of casting is going on with Angelina Jolie and Camille on whatever his name is. But I have that. I have Shang-Chi because that was not announced by Marvel, but that's in the works. So Shang-Chi with martial arts. And if I have to guess, they'll probably do 4 movies next year. And I think,
Or
yeah, I think they'll do 4 because Black Widow, I don't think it's gonna be a big budget movie. Shang-Chi, I don't think it's gonna be a big budget movie, so they can do a smaller mid-tier heroes, and then Eternals might go along the lines of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, where it looks like a lot of money, but it's not. But then Doctor Strange, I think Doctor Strange 2 is going to come next year because we're in for Doctor Strange with the Hulk, right? 2021 now. Oh, and I do have Loki series coming in 2020 as well, the Loki series. 2021, I have Captain America, the Winter Soldier TV series, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And that's a cool name, right? First you had Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Now you have Captain America and the Winter Soldier. That's a good
Absolutely.
So I think that TV show is going to come out in 2021. It may come out next year, but I think they'll give it some time for you to breathe and then show.
I'm really interested. I guess we'll see with the Mandalorian, like what the production is going to look like. Is it going to look like a Marvel Netflix show, or is it going to look like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or is it going to look like a movie?
I did see some leaked footage on YouTube. It looks good.
I'm very hyped.
It looks good. It looks good.
And I hope that whatever the production of Mandalorian is, it kind of, I imagine that it will be reflective of what we can expect budget-wise from Loki.
And an indication of that too is, number one, it's a Marvel Studios production. It's not Marvel Television.
Yeah.
Two is that Kevin did say that these shows are integral to the overall new phases. So they're not just like one-off things, and then they'll affect what goes on in the movies as well. Finally, right?
Yeah.
So Captain America. So 2021, I have Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I have Black Panther 2 coming out in February because they're gonna do a February release. It's too soon for next February, and they're gonna go with February again because it's Black History Month. So Black Panther 2, 2021. I have Ant-Man 3 because I think they're gonna give that a wrap up. I think Ant-Man 3 is gonna get a wrap up.
I hope so.
I think WandaVision, whatever they end up calling it, is gonna come up in 2021 as well. And now I have this movie, The Young Avengers, because
You're missing one, but okay. Well, I'll get to the one you're missing.
Because they're planting this. I think they planted the seed with Young Avengers with, what's his name? Scotland. His daughter is now grown, so she's gonna be Stature. With Hawk, I think the Hawkeye series might pay a little bit of homage to Kate Bishop, or she might get she'll depend, because I have Hawkeye in 2022.
Who is Kate Bishop?
So basically, she's a rich girl. She's socialite, but she's always been interested in sort of fighting crime or whatever. And she's
Batman.
And she's always been obsessed with Hawkeye. So when the Avengers
it's the faux Hawk.
When the Avengers got disassembled, which I think this is why I think it's a perfect time for Young Avengers, because even though the Avengers aren't disassembled in the traditional sense how it was in the comics, where they were literally destroyed by Scarlet Witch, and the fact that Tony went bankrupt so he couldn't bankroll the Avengers anymore, that the Young Avengers came into play where they wanted to take that role as Avengers. Like, the Avengers are gone, let's take up the mantle of being the Avengers. So there was no more, because Hawkeye at the time was dead too. So she took on the mantle of Hawkeye, and then Hawkeye eventually came back and took on, instead of, he said, okay, it's okay for you to be Hawkeye, I'll be Ronin. He went as Ronin for a long time until he took the mantle back, and there were two Hawkeyes. Anyway, so I think Young Avengers, they've been planting the seeds for Young Avengers. It may not end up being the Young Avengers that we know in the comics. They might do their own version, like they might make the Iron Man, the kid from Iron Man, be the new Iron Man. They might make Spider-Man, considering he's still young, be a member of the Young Avengers. Who knows? But I think the Young Avengers is going to come out in 2021. So it'll be Black Panther 2, Young Avengers, Ant-Man 3, and for television shows, it'll be WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldiers. Now, 2022, I have Hawkeye TV series. This could possibly take place after Young Avengers, because if they want to go with what happened in the comics, she was already Hawkeye, and you could have the dynamic between the two of them. Captain Marvel 2 will be in 2022. I have a question mark on Spider-Man 3, because I don't know if they'll renew that whole deal with Sony, because I think Far From Home is the last film in that deal. So if they renew it, I think around this time you could get a Spider-Man 3. Thunderbolts. I put Thunderbolts only because I hear rumors that they're making a Thunderbolts movie. So this would be
I don't know what that is.
basically it's Marvel's Suicide Squad. Is the villain. As a matter of fact, do you know who is the leader of Thunderbolt?
Vulture.
No, Helmet.
Helmet. He's coming back.
Yeah. So and basically their base of operation is the Raft.
But he's so bad though. Like he's he's too bad.
No, that was the idea behind Thunderbolts in the comics. Is that how Thunderbolts came in the comics, right? It was the Masters of Evil, which had Zemo, a bunch of villains from different comic books. The Avengers were gone, right? Because of Age of Onslaught, where Onslaught got rid of all the Avengers. They said, all right, let's be heroes, right? Let's trick everyone to loving us. And then when they least expect it, we take over. Yeah, right? That was their master plan to become heroes, Thunderbolts. But then what happened was everyone loved being heroes except Zemo. So when it came time to pull the trigger on their plan, they turned against Zemo. So you could have something like that happen in this movie. So Thunderbolts, the Avengers, again, even though the Avengers aren't disassembled in the traditional sense like in the comics, we don't know exactly where they are right now in terms of was there a will set up in Tony Stark's will that will allocate some funds to rebuilding the Avengers facility? Will they have to? What of the Sokovia cars? We don't know anything right now, right? So these are just guesses on my part of how they could fill the void. So then, Thunderbolts would fill that, and then 2022 again, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because that's not gonna come out until Suicide Squad 2. So Suicide Squad comes out in 2021. So I have Guardians Volume 3 coming out in 2022, maybe 2023, but I think the earliest we'll see that is 2022. With Thor. Then 2023, I have I called it the Defenders, but I changed the title to the New Avengers, which has Ronan, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Spider-Man, all the heroes, Shang-Chi, all that heroes that we introduced in this new phase, all of them. So you'll get to know each of these characters by the time they do like a new Avengers. But I think they should make it a smaller scale Avengers movie, going back to basics, not just your big world-ending thing with these new characters. Then I have question mark Fantastic Four, because Kevin Feige says he has this plan for 5 years. Before he ever gets started on these movies, but when the deal went through with Spider-Man, a year later he was in Civil War. So
he's got his plans, but he's also got if we can get these characters, here's how they fit into our plans.
So I think around the earliest we'll probably get a Fantastic Four movies in 2023. So I put Avengers, Fantastic Four in 2023, and I put the Inhumans. I think he's gonna give Inhumans another shot. He's going to give it another shot on his terms this time, because Inhumans play a big role going forward in the cosmic universe. 2024, I have Nova, Annihilation, and X-Men. Question mark beside X-Men, because he might skip that because that's too big. He might skip that. And then 2025, I have Secret Invasion.
No. Wait. Secret Invasion is the one that I hate, right?
With the
Skrulls?
The Skrulls, yeah.
Yeah, never going to happen.
If they do Annihilation,
nope.
Annihilation would wipe out the Skrull Empire, and they have to find a new home, which is Earth. Secret Invasion.
Nope. Stop it. I think I like your list.
Uh-huh.
I think that we're gonna get. I can't imagine that. I mean, do we know that they don't have a Spider-Man 3 like in the cards at Sony right now?
They may, but it's not public. Because what we know for on public, he was scheduled for 5 films, at least Tom Holland. It was Spider-Man, Homecoming. It was his appearance in Civil War, his appearances in the 2 Avengers, and Far From Home. And that was the end. And not only his contract, but the deal that they made with Marvel was for these 5 projects.
Mm.
I'm sure they probably renewed it already, but they won't let people know because, like, number one, Sony is making money on these things, for crying out loud,
Yeah, first time they made money on a Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 3.
right? And then two, it's working. Critically, it's working. Narratively, it's working.
And they got Venom out of it.
Right, they get to eat their cake. They get to
Have it,
and eat it too, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Well, basically, I'm saying that, like, Kevin Feige didn't necessarily want Spider-Man Far From Home coming out now.
Right.
I think that if it was up to him, he would have. Endgame would have been it for 2019.
Yeah.
And they would have waited until 2020. But they didn't really have. But they were contractually obligated with Sony to put out Spider-Man 2 in 2019. And they decided, well, let's do the Ant-Man style. Yeah. Oh, always put the bugs after the Avengers.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, I would imagine that maybe they got like an extension, because I know that all the main Avengers extended their contracts when they decided to do Infinity War as 2 movies.
Yeah.
I wonder, if they did that with Spider-Man as well, if they kind of negotiated that on the side.
Probably.
Because I can't imagine that they would have a contract to do 2 movies and not a third, because everyone's obsessed with trilogies. And that if it follows, the 2017-2019, like, it had to be every 2 years, we'll get Spider-Man Far From Homecoming, in Spider-Man Graduation, in 2021.
Or Welcome Home, or Homeward Bound.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. That's my. If I had to logic my way through it, I think 2021 Spider-Man again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could work too. Yeah, so that was my list, and I think we went on for 3 hours and 26 minutes. That's longer than the damn movie.
Longer than the movie.
But yeah, so it was a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about,
and we're excited for the future for Marvel, and we'll definitely find out where it's heading between July and August, whether it's at D23 or Comic-Con, and I can't.
They should save it. They should save it for New York Comic-Con, because that's the one I'll probably be at.
Well, I won't be at this one because the tickets are already sold out. Is it? I think so.
Comic-Con tickets are already sold out? Jeez.
I think so. I may be wrong, but I think
nerds are ravenous.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the show.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Marky Tundra. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Pop Culture Galaxy. Where can they find you, Zach?
They can find me on Twitter at my name, Zach Wojner. You can find me on Instagram at Zach Woj. And you can read all my work at screenrant.com.
Yeah, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment down below. Hit that notification bell so you can get when I drop new videos. And hit that like button, that thumbs up, that little thumb, right? So let us know in the comment below what you thought of Endgame and where does that rank with you guys, and what are you looking forward to in the MCU going forward. All right, so until next time, folks, peace.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's good. Excellent.